Anyway, book 10. Everybody prep. Get your snacks, get your drinks, get your copy of the book, whatever you have. If you're doing an activity, like get yourself set. Let's go. Good, we are all ready. So, book 10. This is the Bewitching Queen of Aeaea, obviously referring to Circe. So, we all know, last chapter, last book, we met Polyphemus. Polyphemus. We endured the nuttiness of all of that. I am not answering the creative punishment in Tartarus portion Game Wizard because we are now at the point of book club notes, but it would be creative. So, book 10, as we know, we managed to escape Polyphemus. Polyphemus hit up a super specific curse because Odysseus decided to dox himself in a moment of anger-induced stupidity. And we know that Poseidon heard. Which means bad things for Odysseus. Explains why, in book 5, when we finally met Odysseus, Poseidon rolled up like, I'ma churn up the sea of death. While he was on his way to the Phaeacians. So, he just said, I'm your sea god. I'm gonna mess you up. Yeah, previously on the Odyssey. Stupid. That is just so stupid. And moments of the crew seeming to maybe be right, where they're like, maybe we don't piss off the guy who's chucking giant rocks at us. So, book 10. The Bewitching Queen of Aeaea. We reached the Aeolian island next, the home of Aeolus, Hippotas' son. So, the reason I stumble over that name, Hippotas, it's sometimes written as Hippotes. So I'm not really sure if it's supposed to be Hippotas or Hippotes. I have seen it both ways. It doesn't seem to be a typo. So there's that. So we have Aeolus, Hippotas' son, and ruler of the winds. So in fact, Aeolus also appears in the Argonautica, written by Apollonius of Rhodes, and he shows up because Hera requests that he calm all the winds with the exception of the west wind, which, yes, that's gonna sound familiar to what you get in here, so that they can aid Jason and the other Argonauts in their homeward journey, because Hera was really the god who favored Jason the most, until he screwed up so badly even she couldn't stand it. What else is new? I'm your sea god. Yes, for those who don't know, I took the song Your Idol from K-pop Demon Hunters and started writing lyrics for Poseidon because I got bored. That's what happens. It's great. Hippotes. Okay, yeah. Hippotes made more sense to me than Hippotas, but I have seen the Tas. I don't know why. It must be some sort of weird translation quirk because Fagels is not the first person I've seen do this. So yeah, Hippotes' son, beloved by the gods who never die. A great floating island it was, and round it all huge ramparts rise of indestructible bronze, and sheer rock cliffs shoot up from sea to sky. The king had sired 12 children within his halls, 6 daughters and 6 sons in the lusty prime of youth. So he gave his daughters as wives to his 6 sons. Seated beside their dear father and doting mother, with delicacies aplenty spread before them, they feast on forever. All day long, the halls breathe the savor of roasted meats, and echo round to the low moan of blowing pipes, and all night long, each one by his faithful mate, they sleep under soft piled rugs on corded bedsteads. To this city of theirs we came, their splendid palace, and Aeolus hosted me one entire month. He pressed me for news of Troy and the Argive ships and how we sailed for home, and I told him the whole long story, first to last. Rugs instead of blankets. Soft-piled rugs, same thing, rugs, blankets. Rugs didn't necessarily have backings the way we think of it now. They're all probably being made of wool, so blanket versus rug. Maybe the translation choice is ipotates, which is the patronymic. Mariana, that would make sense, actually. Ipotates. So his children got married to each other. I'm not misunderstanding. No, you're not. Well, as they say, they do this forever. So Aeolus kind of gets blessed with something unique for the fact that he was made the keeper of the winds. He's so loved by the gods. So it's less weird that his children are marrying each other. Again, with the gods doing that, because you have a lot, I mean, Zeus marries his own sibling, he marries Hera. So it's less weird when you are in some way kind of immortal. It's odd. With regards to incest, is Aeolus a god and the rules don't apply? He's not a god. Not in this version. Now, there are later, essentially, interpretations of Aeolus where he seems to become much more of a godlike figure. But right now, he's not a god. He's not considered part of the Theoi in any way. But yes, when it comes to the Theoi, rules don't really apply. It seems in this case, because he is such the blessing of a god, and because they are on this island that they never leave, they kind of just shrug. What do you mean by giving his 6 daughters to his 6 sons? They married. They married. Being blessed by the gods, is he his immortal? Or would his children carry his duty by being keepers of the winds? The children will likely carry that duty of being keepers of the winds. Currently, it does not seem he is immortal. Now, again, when you get into later interpretations of Aeolus, he is made to be some kind of more of a minor god. But currently in the Odyssey, in this archaic tradition, he is not. Is the 12 children supposed to reflect the Titans? Was the 6 and 6 a special number? Whether or not it was a special number, I can't say, but they're not meant to reflect the Titans. It's just basically to say, like, damn, he and his wife were busy. They were busy. How did Aeolus become Keeper of the Winds? As they say here, he was beloved by the gods. They just liked him, and they decided, we're going to make you the guy who keeps the winds. Pretty much it. There's no real dramatic story there. It's just kind of funny. A lot of islands where people never leave them. Less than you'd think, but also it's because sea travel is scary as hell. In the case of Aeaea, remember that Aeaea is untethered to the seafloor, so it kind of floats around. They don't really have to leave. They basically travel whenever. Yeah, the gods kind of liked his vibe. Really. And then, when I begged him to send me on my way, he denied me nothing. He went about my passage. He gave me a sack, the skin of a full-grown ox, binding inside the winds that howl from every quarter. Now, the winds, remember, these are the 4 winds, north, south, east, west. So, Boreas, Notus, Eurus, and Zephyrus. In this case, we want Zephyrus to be free. We want the west wind because we are trying to blow him west. We are trying to blow him home. When all of the winds are out, you can't really wrangle them. You know, you're just in for absolute chaos. But for Zeus had made the king the master of all the winds, with power to calm them down or rouse them as he pleased. Aeolus stowed the sack inside my holds, lashed so fast with a burnished silver cord. Not even a slight puff could slip past that knot. Yet he set the west wind free to blow us on our way and waft our squadron home. But his plan was bound to fail. Yes, our own reckless folly swept us on to ruin. 9 whole days we sailed, 9 nights. Non-stop, which by the way is pretty insane that you would sail that long without stopping. Pretty wild. Like, sailing through the night in that way, not as common, because you wanted to keep a coastline of some type in sight so that you could beach your ship and rest. Our own is an interesting translation choice. Odie hasn't hesitated to blame his men before, but this time he used our, which is English. Sounds like he takes part. He says our like the royal we. Mankind's folly. It is our folly. It is the folly of the crew. Like, so when he talks about the crew, he's also talking about our. Eurylochus has not been named. And also, Eurylochus is not the one to open the windbag. Again, that is something unique to Epic the Musical. It is not in the Odyssey. Took the winds of Poseidon's storm. I picture the storm clouds were still there, but they generated no wind. First off, this is not Poseidon's storm. So I really can't speak to what Jorge was imagining when he wrote Epic. If we look at the Odyssey, this is not a storm that's generated by Poseidon. It's just, hey, could you help us out? We've generally kind of had shit weather, and in fact, Odysseus implies very heavily and straight out says in the previous book that he's saying this is Zeus. So Aeolus is like, cool, I'll lock up these 3 winds and you can go. So in this case, it's just the wind is not giving them trouble. That's really the issue, because while there is on the Pentaconter a kind of like OG version of a type of rudder that you could use. We don't have a wheel, and you're really operating under the power of your oars and wind, and you want the wind to be favorable to you, because if you're trying to fight the wind, you have less at your disposal to be able to do so. Silver cord, just a show of wealth. Yeah, but also telling you, like, you needed a silver cord. You needed something really strong, essentially, to bind these winds down. Because, yeah, they're in the bag and they're contained, and this bag is unique. And let's also remember, he's talking about how big this bag is. The height of an entire ox. This is not a tiny little thing kept at his hip. It's huge, right? To contain the 3 winds in it. So yes, no, Aeolus cannot tame a storm that's from Poseidon. And Poseidon does not generally send storms. Poseidon churns up the sea, which nobody can really do anything about unless Zeus were to step in and say, hey bro, can you stop? If somebody is sending a storm, it is probably more likely Zeus or one of his children who've kind of like asked, hey daddy, can I just like go a little nuts? AKA Athena. My translator has a note that differentiates between this our folly and later times when Odysseus addresses the responsibility to his crewmen. Mariana, what is the note? Is it just noting that this is different, or do they say more on that? Because now I'm actually curious. Because I took it as like it's our folly, and that he says like, hey, part of it was because again, we're going to continue in the story where we know that he falls asleep. So he's going to blame the fact that he fell asleep. So to him, that's his folly, is that he fell asleep, and therefore the crew are able to then open the wind bag, which I'm like, okay. Sure. If I had to guess why he says our folly, it's because he will continue on and he will talk about like, curse me, I fell asleep. And that to him is his folly. Like, oh, I was reckless for falling asleep and they were reckless for opening the bag and not trusting me. Ceremedes, that is definitely like one of my various issues with, the whole treatment of the wind bag and calling it Poseidon Storm and all that. I'm like, that's not how that works, and that's not what it was in the Odyssey, which, and again, I have nothing wrong with you making changes, I just thought the execution was a little sloppy. Is plural here we ourselves? When he addresses the problem with Aeolus, he speaks about the comrades. So yeah, in this case, when he's about to talk about the wind bag and he says we ourselves, he's talking about all of them. Part of that would be that he fell asleep. He considers himself unintentionally complicit in this whole thing. Wasn't part of the crew present when Aeolus gave the bag to Odysseus? Shouldn't they know it's the wind held in there, not treasure? They may not have been there when Aeolus specifically gave the winds to Odysseus and explained it to him. Because they're there, they're milling about Aeaea, but they may not have been a part of that conversation specifically. Would opening the bag be considered treason because Odysseus is their king? Yeah, probably, but at this point, Odysseus doesn't have time to kind of be dealing with that because he does need these dudes alive to sail home. So it's kind of like, we can maybe deal with that issue later, but right now, I'm pissed, but I'm gonna keep you alive because we gotta sail this boat. So yeah, no, it does seem to answer both Pokron's question and to refer back to what Mariana was saying again, that Odysseus, as we continue reading, is going to say, like, he gets so mad at himself for falling asleep. That's where he says we ourselves. He's including himself in the our reckless folly, the folly for him being that he fell asleep, that he could not stay awake for like 10 straight days, which is like, my dude, you'd be hallucinating at that point, but okay, sure, all right. And it's true, there isn't any one person to point to. It's a bunch of people who open the bag. On the 10th, our own land hove into sight at last. We were so close. We could see men tending fires. But now an enticing sleep came on me, bone weary from working the vessel's sheet myself. No let up, never trusting the ropes to any other mate, the faster to journey back to native land. So Odysseus is so not focused on what's happening with his crew because he's like, I will do this all myself, I will do this all. And it's like, okay, well, your crew is going to get sus of something. So he blames himself, but when trying to convince Aeolus, he puts the blame on the crew. He doesn't need to convince Aeolus. Aeolus has already given him the bag. He's saying that, like, later when he keeps telling the story, he will... Well, yes, when he talks to... Yes, when we meet Aeolus later, he's going to blame the crew specifically. But when telling the story to the Phaeacians, he's being a bit more diplomatic. He's explaining, well, okay, yeah, I fell asleep. Silly me. The hypothesis is now they are all dead. He's remembering them. But in the middle of things, when he speaks directly and not a recollection, he blames them straight. Honestly, that would make sense. It is true. Like, let's remember all of these guys have been dead for at least 7 to 8 years at this point. Like, because some of them, you know, die before we have the whole year at Circe's Island. So, like, they've been dead for nearing close to a decade. Random question, but it's regard to a separate part of the Odyssey. Hermes, I don't know exactly what you mean by separate part of the Odyssey. Maybe hold on to the question until we finish the book, and then I'll say, if you've got another question, you can, you know, at the end, I'll ask. Ask that, so then I can see whether it's one that wouldn't be spoileries or anything. Is there a reason beyond just his character that Odysseus has got trust issues? Most of these people are going to have trust issues in general. I think part of it is also, it's not necessarily a trust issue as it is like, Odysseus just like, I will just do it myself. I'm the best. I'm the hero. I'm the king. Heroes are very used to this idea that they have to do things themselves. Because again, that's part of the thing. People always say like, well, why don't the gods help them? Why don't the gods do this? I'm like, well, you're not much of a hero if you're not doing it yourself. Part of it is that Odysseus is just like, no, I'll just do it myself. He just kind of has that attitude of, I'll just do it myself. Which is one thing, but obviously it causes problems because he's not delegating tasks well. He's not paying attention to his own energy. Like, he's basically proving burnout is a thing. It's true, there is no hand holding for these Greek heroes. Because even though people always like to joke that like Perseus got kitted out to the gills to slay Medusa, there was literally no other way he was going to be able to fight Medusa without being kitted out to the gills. So like the gods were like, you're still gonna have to do it yourself, but we will lend you some really cool things because there's no way you're gonna be able to do it without this. Question about something in book 11. Hermes, hold on to that for book 11 specifically. Or if you really, really, really want to know and can't hold yourself, go into the Odyssey book club thread in Discord and ask it there, and I'll see it later and answer it. But if it's something you're okay waiting, if you can wait another 2 weeks for book club when we get to book 11, that would be great. Because let's not go into, we're trying not to do spoilers here. But the crew began to mutter among themselves, sure, I was hauling troves of gold and silver home, the gifts of open-hearted Aeolus, Hippotas' son. The old story. One man glanced at another, grumbling. Look at our captain's luck. So loved by the world, so prized at every landfall, every port of call. Heaps of lovely plunder he hauls home from Troy, while we went through slogging just as hard. We go home empty-handed. Now this Aeolus loads him down with treasure. Favoritism. Friend to friend. Hurry, let's see what loot is in that sack. How much gold and silver. Break it open now! So what's interesting about this bit with the crew all being dead convinced, yeah, I've done my waiting, 12 years of it. Like the crew is acting like, oh, he's obviously hoarding the best for himself. Now, this disobedience and the way they're going about it would be extremely shocking to the Greeks and like really to the audience. So you're getting both the audience, let's remember, of the Phaeacians who are listening to the story, but then also the audience who's hearing the performer tell this whole story of the Odyssey. Because Odysseus had stressed the importance when they were on Ismaros and did the raid at Ismaros of how he made sure to divvy out equal shares to all of his men. He made a huge point about it. There's a reason he made a point about it. It's because then you get to this book and the men are all convinced that Odysseus did not divvy up anything. And it's just like the audience would go, where does this crew get off? I mean, they'd already be like, where do they get off? But it's extra, where do these guys get off? So then what they're about to do in opening the bag is going to be extra shocking to them because they're just like, yo, what are you doing, crew? What are you doing? Yeah, the captain is all hiding the precious. It's ridiculous. Oh my God, Brad Pitt. What's in the bag? If anybody gets the Seven reference. Oh. just as bad, but different. So this couldn't be a case of lying Odysseus with regards to equal shares. It's highly likely that he wouldn't have done something like that. It's just bad practice. Generally, when a king would hire these people essentially to come and sail with him on some sort of adventure or fight in some sort of war, they would make promises they would somehow be paid, whether it be you're taking loot back from the war and or you would potentially maybe get like land shares when you get back. That's part of why these guys sign up for it, right? So the idea that they would raid a place like Ismaros and he wouldn't divvy out so people got shares, that would be so weird. Because that's part of your job as the ruler and the king, and he wouldn't want to make a mistake like that, especially when they're all coming off of Troy and their bloodlust would still be kind of high, and it's all about getting loot. Like, denying people loot or making sure that not everyone got compensated would just be so dumb of Odysseus, and it would not really make sense with actions that had happened previously, like at Troy and the like. So that's where you get into the like, wow, the crew is just, they're greedy. Now, granted, this is something we are going to see multiple times with the crew. They are kind of greedy. Like, we're about to go to Circe, and part of that is that they are greedy. It's interesting. Would the crew have accepted Odysseus saying, I was told not to open the bag until we reached Ithaca. When we reach home, then I'll open the bag for you? Maybe that would have helped. I mean, if he says, we're going to open it when we get back, maybe, but the temptation is there. It's the same thing where you get into like the story of Orpheus and it's just like, don't look back. Like, you get told not to do something, you kind of immediately want to do it. If that makes sense. It's like, don't go in the West Wing. Okay, well, now I gotta go in the West Wing. Like, that niggling bit of curiosity and doubt, unfortunately, once that seed is planted, it's just like, ooh, it's tough. Damn, Odie is really good at foreshadowing and payoff in a story he's telling by the seat of his pants. Yeah, it's because Odysseus and Homer, in especially these parts of the Odyssey, where it's Odysseus telling a story, like, kind of fuse in places, and it's really just like Homer showing off how clever he is. It's great. Yeah, and Pandora's jar, it's kind of the same thing. It's that, which, the Greeks would recognize that, like, oh, he told them not to. But it is also extra shocking when specifically they're talking about thinking that Odysseus is not properly divvying up spoils, because it'd be like, he made a whole point of doing it on Ismaros, he would have obviously done it at Troy. What the heck, guys? So, yeah, I know. A fatal plan, but it won my shipmates over. They loosed the sack, and all the winds burst out, and a sudden squall struck and swept us back to sea, wailing in tears far from our own native land. And I woke up with a start, my spirit churning. Should I leap over the side and drown at once, or grit my teeth and bear it, stay among the living? I bore it all, held firm, hiding my face, clinging tight to the decks, while heavy squalls blasted our squadron back again to Aeolus' island, shipmates groaning hard. And yeah, that would have been terrifying to all of them. That like all of a sudden you have an explosive squall out of nowhere. Like the fact that it didn't blow the ship apart is amazing, but that would have been so terrifying. Like they would have been hanging on to this ship for dear life. I know the poetry. It's so good. We disembarked. Weren't they like an hour or two from Ithaca? Yeah, they were right there. He's saying we could see people tending fires. They were right freaking there. I know. It's always at the last minute. We disembarked on the coast, drew water there, and crewmen snatched a meal by the swift ships. Once we'd had our fill of food and drink, I took a shipmate with me, a herald too, and approached King Aeolus' famous halls, and here we found him feasting beside his wife and many children. Reaching the doorposts at the threshold, down we sat, but our hosts, amazed to see us, only shouted questions. "Back again, Odysseus? Why? Some blustering god attacked you? Surely we launched you well. We sped you on your way to your own land and house, or any place you pleased." So this is around the time Anticleus saw the ships or set a headcanon. I mean, that's a headcanon. That's a headcanon. Yes, no, Omen, exactly. When you want to replace the sink faucet and you forget to shut the water off beforehand. It's literally like, or imagine like if you've ever seen basically like a fire hydrant blow its top. It's that idea. It's all of a sudden, oh god. Yeah, translation from Aeolus. How did you fuck this up this bad? Like, we literally gave it to you toddler version with training wheels. How did you mess this up this bad? You had one job. One job. And to be fair, Aeolus's second reason and his family's second reception here to them at Aeaea is borderline a little rude. Like, they're just, he goes, we arrived, we sat down, we're prepared to kind of basically go through all the motions of Xenia again, and Aeolus just shouts questions at him, which tells you a lot. It would be a clue to the Greek audience. I mean, one, they'd be like, whoa, that seems kind of rude. But also, why would he react this way? A guy who is so loved by the gods, who clearly does great Xenia, why would he be reacting in such a way? I mean, even in surprise, you would try to manage it. This tells you that, one, how reasonably close to the gods Aeolus is, and that he also immediately clocks or gauges potentially that an Olympian is blocking Odysseus' path. As he says, did a god do this to you? That it's for him the only explanation he can think of. But it's also because he knows better, essentially, than to potentially get in the middle of an Olympian who's dead set on somehow either testing or screwing with Odysseus. He's like, oh shit, did I put myself and my family at risk by doing something here? We're trying to get Mariana, why were you trying to get gas and not fully inserting the hose into the tank? Mariana! You have a Discord? I do have a Discord server. Whoever wants to get the Discord server link and put it in here, and I think one of the mods can pin it. We'll put it there for anybody who wants to join. We are a wild little chaotic crew in there. Yeah, no, like, and this is why, even though it would seem like that's really bad Xenia, why is he behaving that way? The audience would actually kind of understand Aeolus's reaction because it would clue them into a lot of things. They'd just be like, what? Excuse? He's just like, why are you here? So they taunted. And this is interesting where he says, so they taunted. To Odysseus, this feels like a taunt because he's now back in the bottoms of like, fuck, I was so close. When in reality, their questions are pretty fucking fair, right? So again, part of this is, remember, you are getting Odysseus' perspective. So sometimes in the way that they speak, Odysseus is hearing it in a certain tone, probably the way that he feels. So for him, these very valid, surprised, and kind of shouting questions to him feel like taunts because he was so close to being home. And yet here they are being like, why are you back here? Didn't we basically give you training wheels and tell you to go? Like, what's going on? Like, to him, that's a taunt. To them, it's a valid question. You literally had a question about this in Xenia. Yes, always, Xenia, always. Xenia, always, always. Here, I have now pinned the Discord in there, so that link that's pinned, that's the Discord. Yes, it is always Xenia. Xenia permeates the Odyssey. It's just always here. What we also get is remembering, as somebody had said, yes, the Game Wizard said, no double dipping on gifts. There is that, but it's also, remember, the tradition of magical objects, as we'll call them in Greek myth. They are pretty much one-time use. You don't get to use it, mess up, and then be like, sorry, can I have a mulligan? Like, can I have a do-over? They're like, no, you screwed up. Sorry, deal with the consequences of these actions. And the very next note was, are they taunting from or are they, is it just Odie's POV? In this case, it does seem to be Odie's POV because these questions are totally valid. I did not read your notes before this. I just, again, as I say, I think there's always a lot of interesting stuff that you can pick up on. Xenia haunts the narrative more than the events of the Trojan War. I'd say it haunts it pretty equally, but in different ways. Although Xenia is far more prominent than the Trojan War. But ultimately, you can look at the Odyssey as like the story of the emotional fallout of the Trojan War, which is sort of interesting. But yes, this is all very much of also showing you that, like, these gifts that you get given, these divine gifts, if they are objects, they are pretty much one-time use. You're not really going to be granted another chance, and so you have to deal with the consequences of your failure. Now, the failure is not... Now, somebody might say, oh, but it's the crew who opened the bag. Ah, but the failure, given Odysseus' status, not just as a Greek hero, but as a king, is not being able to control his crew by going about things the way that he did and by falling asleep and not paying attention to the men around him because he's trying to complete a Nostos. The whole idea is get home. He's failing at it right now. So, all of the problems. Would an ancient audience have been expected to figure out that this has to do with Polyphemus by this point in the story? In terms of Poseidon not liking him, yes. So anxiety leaves, which that's a great name, including the pun on the spelling. If you go back to book 9, when Polyphemus talks about his curse, like Odysseus knew that he was a son of Poseidon, he knows that Polyphemus has set up a curse. Has he quite totally clocked that maybe he is actually a son of Poseidon and Poseidon is big mad at him? He may not have fully clocked that yet. Right now he's just like, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. To quote Davy Jones to Jack Sparrow, then you are a poor captain, but a captain nonetheless. Yes. If you want all the power, you must carry all the blame. Yes. Laertes' fail son. Yeah, at times. So anxiety leaves. The audience is probably clocking, maybe this is Poseidon at work. I mean, we did hear the curse from Polyphemus, basically. Whether or not Odysseus is like thinking about that in this moment, maybe, maybe not. The audience absolutely would probably be remembering it because of just like, you've just been left on that moment of Polyphemus cursing him. And then all this stuff starts happening. They'll be like, Polyphemus did say. Polyphemus said my father will hear about this. He did say he wants you to come home late. So there you go. Yeah, the audience is probably clocking it faster than Odysseus is. Yeah. Yeah, I miss my wife. I miss her a lot. And how's that my problem? I already helped you, basically. Yeah, that is true. Aeolus was so generous to them. I mean, he did great Xenia, but then also did decide, without the urging of a god, he decided, you know what, dude? I'm gonna help you out. And now they're back, basically trying to double dip. He's like, you could not follow basic instructions. That is not my problem. Like, so not my issue. And he's right. It's not his problem. He didn't have to help them in the first place. To the degree which he did, he did them a massive favor. I can't stress how huge a favor Aeolus did them. Especially because usually he's not going to do stuff like that unless an Olympian comes down and tells him to do it. In which case, yeah, sure, whatever you say, dude, you're the boss. In this case, it was just a human coming to him, telling him his story. And he was like, you know what, brah? I'm going to help you. Apparently, you're a moron. Basically. So they taunted, and I replied in deep despair, a mutinous crew undid me, that and a cruel sleep. Set it to rights, my friends, you have the power. So I pleaded, gentle, humble appeals, but our hosts turned silent, hushed. And the father broke forth with an ultimatum. Away from my island, fast, most cursed man alive. It's a crime to host a man or speed him on his way when the blessed, deathless gods despise him so. Crawling back like this. It proves the immortals hate you. Out! Get out! Groan as I did, his curses drove me from his halls, and from there we pulled away with heavy hearts, with the crew's spirit broken under the oars' labor. Thanks to our own folly. No favoring wind in sight. We call these consequences to your actions. And yeah, Aeolus is like, yeah, it's basically doing like the evil eye at him. Like, don't put that evil on me. He's like, no, you're clearly in bad with a god and I want none of that. Don't blame him. Nobody would blame him for this. And he's perfectly within his rights to shoo them away at this point. So I reject this energy. Yeah, this is bad juju and I don't want it. Like, nope, put that thing back where it came from or so help me. Like, he's just like, I'm out. I can't help you with that. 6 whole days we rode. 6 nights non-stop. Sorry, hold on. Peg has deigned to give me back my chair. Haha. Wouldn't it be really embarrassing to admit to a mutinous crew? It is probably not the finest thing, but in that moment, he wants to be like, hey, yo, I'm not dumb. I know how to use the windbag. My crew is full of idiots. It's not the best look, but honestly, compared to being told, like, bro, we gave you training wheels and you fucked up, what's wrong with you? He's just kind of like, whoa, not my fault. Not my fault. Not my fault. And it's like, yeah, tough shit. Yeah, so kind of her to give me back my chair. 6 whole days we rode, 6 nights, non-stop. On the 7th day, we raised the Laestrygonian land. Telepylus, heights where the craggy fort of Lamus rises, where shepherd calls to shepherd as one drives in his flocks, and the other drives his out, and he calls back in answer, where a man who never sleeps could rake in double wages, one for herding cattle, one for pasturing fleecy sheep. The nightfall and the sunrise march so close together. We entered a fine harbor there, all walled around by a great unbroken sweep of sky-scraping cliff, and 2 steep headlands fronting each other, close around the mouth, so the passage in is cramped. Here the rest of my rolling squadron steered, right into the gaping cove and moored tightly, prow by prow. Never a swell there, big or small. A milk-white calm spreads all around the place. Are the screwy days due to the physics of Helios's journey because they're so far west? What do you mean by the screwy days? What's wrong with their days? I am deeply confused as to the question. Odysseus in the Baltic note for me here. Yeah, a lot of people, when they start trying to place where exactly he might be, you'll see stuff like the Baltic, various coasts off of like Italy and other places, so I do not doubt you get that. The Laestrygonians, line 95. The other drives out, where a man who never sleeps can rake in double wages. Oh, nightfall and sunrise march so close together. It could also just be the seasons. But you could argue that they think they're so far west that sunrise and sunset are like super close together. So yeah, it could be that they think they're so far out west. I mean, not west, it would be east. Or is it west? No, this would be east, wouldn't it? If we're talking the Baltic, it's pretty far east. I'll just put it this way. Doesn't really matter. It doesn't. Okay, do you want uppies? Up. Yeah, I know. You got your water? You feel better now? Okay. Great. Excellent. I'm glad. I'm happy for you. No, west. They're trying to go west. The idea is technically they would actually be pretty... I mean, maybe they are off course. Actually, no, they are west. Look, here's the thing. We don't know where exactly Odysseus is within the Mediterranean. Like, there's no actual map to tell you. And as my grandfather would tell you, where exactly he is in the world is kind of not the point. Like, you get very lost in the sauce. Again, anybody who's been in the Discord or can remember when I posted the thing about time on Aeaea, and I basically said, I let you see my grandfather basically rapping me on my academic knuckles for everybody to see. I do need a bigger chair, it's true. Like, let's be real, I absolutely need a bigger chair. I will read to you part of this email that my grandfather sent, where he also talks about the geography. Yes, Troy is as far east as they could go without hitting land. So, true. So we are further west. I'm already directionally challenged. So Odysseus' journey does not make my life easier. So my grandfather, I'd asked him a question with regards to time, and he said something. He goes, we are all of us prone to think in historical and geographical terms when we encounter texts like the Odyssey. When I was lecturing in the Mediterranean for the Smithsonian, my fellow tourists battered me with questions about what historic places we could identify with the travels of Odysseus. And indeed, several of the most popular of the study cruises I led were entitled The Journey of Odysseus. So insistent were these queries that, much against my inclination, I put together a website for them, back in the infancy of HTML coding, so the site, which I have not revisited, is rough around the edges. The problem, as I say, the problem you pose, I think, is a false one. For one thing, the Odyssey, as I'm sure you know, comes from a long tradition of oral poetry, such that we have in Homer such that what we have in Homer may not include all of the travels involved. He goes, think further of Mycenaean seafaring, which eschewed sailing beyond sights of land, thus adding months and days to trips. So that was all about time. But he says, in short, the Odyssey is not a Mediterranean itinerary or calendar, but a geography of the soul, a symbolic rather than a physical journey. To mistake them is to make the kind of mistake made by a brilliant physicist named Dirac, who, when asked if he enjoyed reading Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, said, it was okay, but the author errs in making the sun rise twice in the same day. So it's like getting lost in the details that aren't as important. We're at the end of the earth. I mean, it could be It could be, but technically we're going to argue he potentially might sail even further west at some point. So yeah, your sense of where exactly we are, we don't know. Part of it could also just be that you get an element of seasons. Like we don't even really know what time of year it is right now. Is it the dry season, the wet season? Like, are days longer? Is it shorter? Yeah, Grandpa Book Club. I know, Grandpa Book Club cameo always. Dirok, love from me. You don't ask where Sleeping Beauty's castle is. Yeah, it's very allegorical. So I do get that you're saying, like, is it him trying to say we are out at the edges of the world? Not actually necessarily, because we've mentioned other places that are kind of more like that. So it's just sort of, we're off, in their view, they're off the map. I don't think for him he would say this is probably the edges of the earth. They were kind of aware that the idea of the Atlantic Ocean exists. So it's like, but we're off our main map. It's summer. Odysseus mentions it later. Oh, okay. Yeah, the idea is that he's not, whoops, didn't mean the hand raise there. Oh, no, it's fine. It just means that, yeah, so summer would be long days, shorter nights. So he could also be reflecting the season that it is. So it's, yeah. Here the rest of my rolling squadron steered right into the gaping cove and moored tightly, prow by prow. Never a swell there, big or small, a milk-white calm spreads all around the place. But I, alone, anchored my black ship outside, well clear of the harbor's jaws. And this is why he's going to be the only one to escape the basically traffic that's going to happen when everybody's in a parking lot and in a jam. Wasn't Atlantic Ocean the ocean river? I don't remember exactly what it translates as, but they knew the Atlantic Ocean existed. World War Bronze. Exactly. I tied her fast to a cliffside with a cable. I scaled its rock face to a lookout on its crest, but glimpsed no trace of the work of man or beast from there. All I spied was a plume of smoke drifting off the land. So I sent some crew ahead to learn who lived there. Men like us, perhaps, who live on bread. 2 good mates I chose, and a third to run the news. They disembarked and set out on a beaten trail. The wagons used for hauling timber down to town from the mountain heights above. And before the walls, they met a girl drawing water. Antiphates, his strapping daughter, king of the Laestrygonians. She'd come down to a line 90 references a fort. Did they have forts? That sort of natural formation. The craggy fort of Lammas rises. He's talking about a natural formation. All I spied with my little eye. Exactly. Fellow bread fan. She'd come to a clear running spring, Artasia, where the local people came to fill their pails. My shipmates clustered round her, asking questions. Who was the king of this realm? Who ruled the natives here? She waved at once to her father's high-roofed halls. They entered the sumptuous palace, found his wife inside, a woman huge as a mountain crag who filled them all with horror. Straightway, she summoned royal Antiphates from assembly, her husband, who prepared my crew a barbarous welcome. Girl king clarification, please. There is no girl king. Is the daughter not also a giant? It seems that she's not. She might not reach giant till fully grown. Girl king clarification. There is no girl king. We're saying this is the daughter of Antiphates, king of the Laestrygonians. We haven't even named her. Straightway she summoned royal Antiphates from assembly, her husband, who prepared my crew a barbarous welcome. Snatching one of my men, he tore him up for dinner. The other 2 sprang free and reached the ships. But the king let loose a howling through the town that brought tremendous Laestrygonians swarming up from every side. Hundreds, not like men, like giants. Down from the cliffs, they flung great rocks a man could hardly hoist, and a ghastly, shattering din rose up from all the ships. Men in their death cries, hulls smashed to splinters. They speared the crews like fish and whisked them home to make their grisly meal. But while they killed them off in the harbor depths, I pulled the sword from beside my hip and hacked away at the ropes that moored my blue-prowed ship of war and shouted rapid orders at my shipmates. Put your backs in the oars, now row or die! In terror of death, they ripped the swells, all as one, and what a joy as we darted out toward open sea, clear of those beetling cliffs. My ship alone. But the rest went down en masse. Our squadron sank. We mentioned in a previous book club the ships are black. What word is this translation translating to blue? Is it the same word as Poseidon's hair? You would have to ask Mariana. I cannot tell you. Good one, Fagels. Mariana approves the translation. What is a mountain crag? It's like craggy rocks. It's just natural formations. I'm very bad at geology. Blue ship, blue proud. So he's saying the front might be painted blue when in general they do appear black because of the fact they were covered in pitch. But they did have decorative elements on them, so if he was using something to be some sort of guano proyo, it's dark blue, yes. So they were painting decorative elements on these ships as well, usually in the front at the mast. Why did they immediately try to kill the crew? Because like Polyphemus, the Laestrygonians are the monstrous other. They are big cannibal giants. They are the monstrous other. We have yet to really have him find a place that does not in some way screw him over, which kind of falls in line with the Nostos, especially if the Nostos is areas where you do not recognize, truly do not recognize. And I will say the fact we did mention that the Laestrygonians are in some way descended from Poseidon. I think they're like the king. I think Antiphates is supposed to be like his grandson, great-grandson, they are related, which kind of explains why they're giants, and really the only thing. Poseidon has a tendency to have, giant children. I mean, think of his other major one being, Orion, who was a giant dude and could walk on water like it was land, doing Jesus before Jesus. So, he just has this interesting tendency that, if any god is going to produce giant-sized progeny, it's somehow going to be Poseidon. Yeah, they're monsters. Which source gives us that relation to Poseidon? Good question, actually. I don't know off the top of my head. Let's take a look-see. Laestrygonians. People do like the way that I say it. Tribe of man-eating giants. Where exactly did we say? Antiphates. The Laestrygonians. Who was that source? Hesiod. That's who it was. Hesiod. He says that the Laestrygonians were sprung from Laestrygon, who was a son of Poseidon. So that comes from Hesiod, who's a source kind of around the same, being written down around the same time as Homer. That's who I thought, but I wasn't sure. Laestrygonians. We also attribute him to the Pegasus sometimes. Usually the Pegasus is associated with Medusa. You cut off the Medusa's head, the Pegasus springs from it. But he is associated with horses. This is very true. He is a god associated with horses. We love a legit source, yes. Yeah, it is Hesiod. From there, we sailed on, glad to escape our death, yet sick at heart for the dear companions we had lost. Let's remember, he just lost 11 ships. Now he's lost, kind of people leading up to this point, but 11 ships. That's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of people. It's just, that's quite a bit. And that sucks. We reached the Aeaean island next, the home of Circe, the nymph with lovely braids, an awesome power too, who can speak with human voice, the true sister of murderous-minded Aeetes. Both were bred by the sun who lights our lives. Their mother was Perse, a child the ocean bore. So, our first introduction to hearing about Circe. Again, this is Odysseus setting the audience up because he doesn't actually know at the time that this is Circe's island. So this is him introducing the island to the Phaeacian audience, like setting them up for it, while he at the time would not realize where the heck they are. What does human voice mean? She speaks such that you might not realize she's a goddess at first. Although, quite frankly, her physical appearance would likely give her away. Because the thing to remember about Circe, she's usually called either like a minor goddess, maybe sometimes a nymph, but a minor goddess. She was known as an enchantress due to her knowledge and abilities with like herbs and potions and kind of magic, so she often gets called essentially like an enchantress, a witch, or whatever. What is the significance? I'm about to get to it, of Circe's brother. So she's, as they say here, they are children of Helios and an Oceanid, this daughter of the ocean named Perse. Now we talk about Aeaea, sister to the murderous Aeaea. Aeaea is the father of Medea. He is the king of Iolcus, the keeper of the golden fleece. So that is why we are mentioning him. It's like, oh yeah, she's tied to the story of the Argonauts. She's related to Medea. Now she's also the sister of Pasiphae, or Pasiphae, I don't exactly know how to pronounce it, who was the wife of King Minos and the mother of the Minotaur. Wild, I know. As well as another sibling who's often mentioned is a character named Perses. So not Perseus and not Per se, her mother, but Perses, who most myths around him seem to involve the idea of him usurping his brother's, so King Aeetes' kingdom, after Jason steals the Golden Fleece. So the thing to remember about all these children of Helios, the way you could usually recognize them, besides that it seems a bunch of them often had kind of some sort of talent with magic in a way, if you will, or like herbs and potions and concoctions, is they were really known for these bright, almost like golden eyes. They would say that almost like light shines from them. And that was what would signal to you, oh, you're something different. It is said even Medea had these similar eyes, and Aeetes did, and it was noting they were in some way descended from Helios, aka the sun. Noting him down as Golden Fleece guy. Yeah, Aeetes' story, the Golden Fleece. Now we know that Circe basically chose Aeaea for herself, like for it to be just like the place that she chilled out, and it was while she happened to be riding with her father Helios in his chariot. Now Apollonius of Rhodes, who is the guy who wrote the Argonautica, seems to imply that Aeaea is somewhere off the western coast of Italy. He notes that it is south of Aeaea, which is the current island of Elba, and that it's sort of within sight of that area. We don't know exactly. This is not a real location, so any sort of writer is potentially going to be making stuff up. Is Circe's brother immortal too? That's a good question. He might be. I think he is, actually. I think all of them, those three are, because they don't have a mortal parent, so that would make sense. If the Minotaur's mother was a minor goddess, as a full sister of Circe, how did she come under the enchantment that made her want to sleep with a cow? Gods and goddesses are not immune to enchantments. If you happen to read the Homeric hymn to Aphrodite, actually that whole story is that she kind of goes under, like, Zeus gets mad that she keeps using Eros to put even other gods under enchantments, and so he basically does it back to her, and that's how she ends up becoming the mother of Aeneas. So gods can absolutely fall under enchantments, especially if they're done by other gods. So it's totally possible. Wait, Helios cared for his daughter. Oh, he's a girl dad. Remember, girl dads all across ancient Greece. I think only Medea's brothers. Yeah, it was Medea's brothers who were chopped up, which was awful and gross. So yes, prior to Odysseus' arrival, as was noted here, why we're pointing out that she is the sister of Aeetes, we know that Circe was involved in the tale of the Argonauts, in that she had to essentially ritually purify them, especially Jason and Medea, for the murder and mutilation of the corpse of Medea's brother. Now, what's interesting is if you read the Argonautica, which is maybe something we can explore for a later book club, we know that she does not approve of Medea's actions, and she's not really pleased about being contacted in the way that she is, and the fact that actually Medea tries to lie about why they're there, but helps them basically because you're my kin, I'll help you out, but I ain't happy about it. Has there been a story of a mortal enchanting or tricking a god, or is it usually only gods who do that to each other? In terms of a mortal tricking a god, you do kind of have Sisyphus, but he gets really punished for it. And other gods tricking each other, I mean, you do... technically the story of Prometheus is sort of him helping humans to trick the gods, so there's that. So it's not really humans doing it. Sisyphus is kind of really the only one of note. Yeah, really, if we weren't fucking related, it's yeah, she's pulling a Hector with Paris. It's really true. Now the interesting thing you'll get is in later Roman myths. Now, some Greek, but mostly Roman myths. They really like to paint Circe as being involved in stories where she's on like the losing end of love triangles, which kind of inevitably end with her punishing and or transforming one of the other two members of this triangle. You get the famous story of Scylla and Glaucus, where Glaucus falls for Scylla, Scylla's not interested. Circe falls for Glaucus, and Glaucus says, sorry, I'm in love with Scylla. By the way, could you be my wing woman and give me basically a love potion? And Circe's like, what the fuck? Which I kind of gotta look at Glaucus like, seriously, bro? Seriously, bro? So she ends up poisoning this water that's like Scylla kind of bathes in, what have you, and it turns Scylla into the monster that she inevitably becomes. The other famous story is Thanatos a god or a titan? He's a god. He's not a titan. There are only 12 titans who are specifically the children of Gaia and Uranos. You get Picus and Canens. So Picus is, I believe he might even be a mortal, who has this nymph wife to whom he's super loyal, but Circe gets the hots for him, but he's just like, bro, no, I'm loyal to my wife. What the hell? I want nothing to do with you. So she ends up turning Picus into a woodpecker, and Canens ends up later dying of, basically passing away from grief. It's really fucking sad, but again, she's on the losing end of a love triangle, and so punishes somebody else who's in that love triangle, and it's like, great, awesome, I think. Glaucus up there on the Greek morons list, it's true. Why did I make a question of Circe's mentioning I've been hurt by love before? Because those are Roman sources. I don't necessarily know if there is a Greek source to back it up. So the way epic Odysseus did wouldn't have worked. I don't know what that question... I don't know what part of epic you're talking about. So... Now, Hesiod, again, this writer we've mentioned, wrote one of his very famous pieces, which is the Theogony. And in the Theogony, he says that because Odysseus, as we know, is going to spend like a year here on Aeaea, and even this won't totally make sense unless you give birth to triplets, but he claims that actually Circe bore Odysseus 3 sons, Agrius, Latinos, and Telegonus, who ends up actually ruling over who are called the Tyrsonoi, which is believed to, I think, be the Etruscans. Now, because I've mentioned Telegonus or Telegonus, we have to talk briefly about the Telegony / the Telegony, which I know everybody's going to start saying there is no Telegony of Asking Say. I know it is very kind of controversial, especially among people who are like not in the classics world, which even I won't technically consider myself in there because again, I don't have a degree in this. But we have to talk about it because I do want to make something kind of clear. So the Telegony, or the Telegony, is a lost Greek epic. It basically currently survives in fragments of lines, which if you can imagine how many lines are in an epic, I mean thousands upon thousands of lines, we've got a smattering of them. Actually of the text. We don't have the whole text. It's gone. It's just sort of lost to history, which is a tragedy in and of itself because we hate losing stuff. But what we do also have are ancient summaries. And these summaries are written by ancient writers who have presumably read the entirety of the epic. In fact, I do believe Apollodorus mentions it in his Bibliothecae, aka his work called the Library, which is kind of an OG version of like an encyclopedia of versions of Greek myths. So here's the thing. It details more about the latter of these sons, aka Telegonus, and basically tells the story of what happens after the Odyssey with Telegonus, in that he will show up, he will kill Odysseus, he will then marry Penelope, and that Circe is going to end up marrying Telemachus. One son each generation. I don't know, but I have heard that from the internet before. I'd have to back check it. So here's the thing about the Telegony. Now, the idea of a lost Greek epic, not that weird. In fact, there are quite a few lost Greek epics. It kind of does ironically get called the epic cycle or the Troy cycle. So the reason it's called that is because there were a whole host of other epics that were written that basically told the entirety of the war at Troy, starting from the marriage of Thetis and Peleus, where Eris rolls up like Maleficent going, "Why didn't you invite me? Fairest of the goddesses shall have a golden apple throwing," all the way through to the Telegony. And now, yes, the Iliad and the Odyssey are included. They are actually the only two we have that survive in their entirety. And here's the thing. Again, a lot of people, especially who are not classicists or not involved in kind of the academic side of this, will look at the Telegony and call it ancient fan fiction because of stuff that happens. And while I may call it that, I want to make it clear that I say it kind of as a joke. Look, because here's the thing about the Telegony, and in terms of how it's viewed by classicists, how it would have been viewed by the Greeks. It absolutely had merit. It has academic merit. It is important for scholars a lot of the times in seeing how people, especially of that day, were potentially receiving the story of Odysseus, if that's the story that exists. Now, me personally, I look at it a little sideways. Not necessarily because of what happens in the plot and because I don't like it, which, yeah, to be fair, I don't. But, Birchwood, fun fact, April 16th, 1178 BCE, the date scholars claim to have been Odysseus' return because the sun was blotted out, was a Wednesday. Wait, we know that? That's kind of hilarious, and I love that. Thank you, Birchwood. That's awesome. So, the thing about the Telegony, I don't like how it ends, because I think the idea of Telegonus shows up, kills Odysseus, and marries Penelope, what? Why? That upsets me. Yeah, I don't like it. Let's be fair, there are lots of endings in Greek myth that I don't necessarily like. The thing that I look at and go is Greek mythology does have a lot of contradictions in and of itself, depending on who's writing it, so I can kind of say pick your poison, and I would like to ignore it. But the reason I look at it mostly a little sideways is, again, it's part of this whole cycle of different epics that are looking at the war at Troy. And that includes the Odyssey. As I say, the Odyssey exists kind of like the emotional fallout from Troy. We spend all this time with other Greek heroes who fought at Troy. We feel their grief and the weariness and the stuff they feel that is a direct result of the Trojan War. But the Telegony, at least from what I have read of the summaries, doesn't really deal with any of that. And so it feels really out of place for me personally. But that is not me saying it doesn't have academic merit. I also think it's important not to seriously call it fan fiction. Because unfortunately, as Mariana and I can both attest, we have watched and seen by going down rabbit holes essentially the existence of what you could almost call ancient fan fiction, and how much scholars hated it, and the detrimental effect it could have on stuff because people were basically making up headcanons in a way where it's please remember these were sacred texts. So the Telegony does exist. It is a valid epic we just no longer have. And again, all those other lost epics are in the same boat. We have scattered lines that we're missing, scattered lines that remain, and we have these ancient summaries. And again, if you think back to book 8, where I talked about how we compare Odysseus to a weeping woman and how that actually ties to Andromache, that comes from one of the lost epics. The whole story of Odysseus chucking Astyanax off the walls at Troy comes from a lost epic. These are all from these lost epics. Now, the interesting thing also I will say about these lost epics is you have to wonder if in those ancient times they had these lost epics and they go, is there any knowledge about lost epics from other Troy characters then, like Agamemnon? Yes, a lot of information from other characters will come from these lost epics. So you can look up about those lost epics and try and find any of translated versions of the ancient summaries of what supposedly, happened in them. So Odysseus there's no more or less canon. There are multiple versions of what happens to Astyanax. It's just that one of those versions happens to come from I think it's the Iliophersis, which is one of these lost epics. And I've now lost my train of thought. Shoot. Oh, there it was. The thing is to remember, how would the Greeks have looked at these other lost epics? They would have held them as having the same mythological value as the Odyssey and the Iliad. However, in terms of how good were they, I can tell you that Herodotus, the guy who basically invented what we consider history writing, that guy, he said himself, the foundation of Greek culture is Homer and Hesiod. So Homer and Hesiod were held in that much higher regard because their writing was just that much better, and it was so foundational to their culture. But that doesn't mean the other epics didn't have merit, and unfortunately that does include the Telegony. Now, if you read the summary of the Telegony and it is absolutely not your vibe, I will then tell you don't read Circe by Madeline Miller because you're not going to have a fun time with the back third of it. But I had to bring it up because I was mentioning that, hey, Hesiod claims that she had 3 sons by Odysseus. And unfortunately, one of them being Telegonus. So we had to detour a bit on the telegony. Are we sure that the Odyssey and the Iliad are complete? Yeah, we're reasonably sure that they are complete, that they are not missing lines, especially because they more than any other, were preserved through time, and they were performed so much more often than these others. Oh, it had a solar eclipse and it would Oh, that actually makes sense. Good point. Good point. So he might as well have thrown it personally. Yeah, the Trojan Women is where I was familiar, where it's like he came up with the idea, but he may not have done it, and there's versions where it's Neoptolemus who does it. Like, again, Greek mythology, because it doesn't have, like, a Bible, if you will, has a lot of contradictions and variations on themes, and so there's often no, like, more or less canon than the other, and so, yeah. 3 kids in 1 year, no triplets. I know. No, trust me. I know. I'm pretty sure my grandfather even said something about that in the email where he's like, look, you really can't start trying to sweat the details of time and place because it's just not worth it, and it's sort of losing sight of what's actually happening here. So yeah, do we know why the Iliad and the Odyssey specifically were the most popular and got passed down to the modern day? They were that good. They were that good. Like, truly, they were that good. I mean, and to be honest, of the epics that I've read, yeah, they are that good. I kind of don't blame them. Like, ooh, they are that good. So yeah, Hesiod was smoking the good shit. So yeah, sorry, I know we all make the jokes of there is no telegony in Ba Sing Se and like all of those things, but we had to briefly talk about it. So there we go. We're no longer thinking of the telegony. We said our piece. How much time did Odysseus spend on Circe's island again? Was it years or it felt like it? We are going to hear him say it himself. It is a year. There's a reason we still read it to this day. Yeah. There's a reason it stayed preserved the way that it did, that it has always been considered like a foundational piece of literature canon, if you will. They were like It's a Wonderful Life and Willy Wonka movies being shown on TV every year around the holidays. That's how good they were. Yeah, and also in the classical era, there was actually a particular religious festival in Athens where people would compete by performing the entirety of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Like, it was performed every year in Athens as part of a religious festival. Like, they were important works and they were loved. For other myths are there books like the Odyssey and Iliad. Like the Odyssey and Iliad, there are some other epics. I mean, there are some Roman epics. In terms of Greek epics, I can't really think. The closest you might get is the Argonautica. But then you have plenty of other works, but something that's like the Iliad and the Odyssey that still we have to this day, not so much. It might have been Dionysus's festival. That sounds about right. They were live performances. Yeah, and honestly, who wouldn't love a live performance? Like, who doesn't want to sit and listen to a dude who, like, devotes their life to being able to recite epic poetry with whatever music might be playing behind it? Like, hell yeah, I'm down. Hell yeah. That'd be so long. So long. We brought our ship to port without a sound, as a god eased her into a harbor safe and snug, and for 2 days and 2 nights we lay by there, eating our hearts out, bent with pain and bone tired. When dawn with her lovely locks brought on the 3rd day, at last I took my spear and my sharp sword again, rushed up from the ship to find a lookout point, hoping to glimpse some sign of human labor, catch some human voices. I scaled a commanding crag, and scanning hard, I could just make out some smoke from Circe's halls, drifting up from the broad terrain through brush and woods. Mulling it over, I thought I'd scout the ground, that fire aglow in the smoke. I saw it, true, but soon enough, this seemed the better plan. I'd go back to the shore, and the swift ship first feed the men, then send them out for scouting. I was well on my way down, nearing our ship, when a god took pity on me, wandering all alone. He sent me a big stag with high branching antlers right across my path. The sun's heat forced him down from his forest range to drink at a river's banks. just bounding out of the timber when I hit him, square in the backbone, halfway down the spine, and my bronze spear went punching clean through. He dropped in the dust, groaning, gasping out his breath. Treading on him, I wrenched my bronze spear from the wound, left it there on the ground, and snapping off some twigs and creepers, twisted a rope, about a fathom long. I braided it tight, hand over hand, then lashed the 4 hocks of that magnificent beast. Loaded round my neck, I lugged him toward the ship, trudging, propped on my spear. No way to sling him over his shoulder, steadying him with one free arm. The kill was so immense. I flung him down by the hull and roused the men, going up to them all with a word to lift their spirits. Listen to me, my comrades, brothers in hardship. We won't go down to the house of death, not yet. Not till our day arrives. Up with you. Look, there's still some meat and drink in our good ship. Put our minds to food. Why die of hunger here? Oh, the peg snores, I know. That is not a person. Agnes, no, that's not a person. It's not implied to be a person. None of the other wild animals are implied to be people here on Circe's Island. This is not cannibalism. This was not a person. I do want to make that clear. This seems to be something that has made its rounds in some later stories, that some of the animals might have been people she magicked, but it is implied that no, these are not people. It's like, won't you, Odysseus? Won't you, though? I know. Most certainly is not. Yeah. Alvinor sneezing after being told they won't die just yet. Oops. Not cannibalism on a technicality. It's also just not cannibalism. It's a deer. They're eating a deer. The deer was never once human. It's just a deer. I promise it's just a deer. Like, calm down, everyone. Was Circe going to eat Odysseus' crew turn to pigs? No, she was not. No. She just turned the pigs because she could. She was not going to eat them. My hearty urging brought them round at once. Heads came up from cloaks, and there by the barren sea they gazed at the stag, their eyes wide, my noble trophy. But once they'd looked their fill and warmed their hearts, they washed their hands and prepared a splendid meal. Now, all day long till the sun went down, we sat and feasted on sides of meat and seasoned wine. Then, when the sun had set and night came on, we lay down and slept at the water's shelving edge. When young Dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, I called a muster quickly, informing all the crew. Listen to me, my comrades, brothers in hardship. We can't tell east from west, the dawn from the dusk, nor where the sun that lights our lives goes under earth, nor where it rises. We must think of a plan at once. Some cunning stroke. I doubt there's one still left. I scaled a commanding crag, and from that height surveyed an entire island, ringed like a crown by endless wastes of sea. But the land itself lies low, and I did see smoke drifting up from its heart through thick brush and woods. My message broke their spirit, as they recalled the gruesome work of the Laestrygonian king Antiphates, and the hearty cannibal Cyclops thirsting for our blood. They burst into cries, wailing, screaming live tears that gained us nothing. What good can come of grief? I find this line very interesting, the idea of what good can come of grief. It's interesting because so much of the story of the Odyssey, moments in the Odyssey, and especially talking about songs of Kleos, is about profound, immeasurable grief. Yes, the men would be grieving those they'd lost, they would be a little scared, but the reason Odysseus says, like, what good can come from grief, like, what are you doing, is because at this point it's like, bruh, this is nothing. Like, guys, come on, focus, get your shit together, let's go. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, put your big boy skirts on, let's go. Knock it off. So for him, this isn't grief, this is fear. And this is potentially cowardice. And he's like, snap out of it. Enough. I know, so much snoring. The exact verse when Patroclus misses Sarpedon and kills his horse instead. So confirmed, deer is a deer, no man. Yeah, no, exactly. Don't know why people keep thinking the deer is a man. It's a deer. It's just a deer. And so, man tears are fine, just no whining. Exactly. And so, numbering off my band of men-at-arms into 2 platoons, I assigned them each a leader. I took one, and Lord Eurylochus the other. Eurylochus finally enters the goddamn chat. I swear to God, it was like, wait, what in the world, guys? Where's Eurylochus? Okay, so, Eurylochus, Odysseus' brother-in-law, married to his sister Ximene. He paid, apparently, an extremely generous bride price in order to marry her. So, like, damn, girl, get it. You expensive. And he said he is from an island, the island of Same, which is near Ithaca and Kephallonia. So that's kind of all we really know about Eurylochus. This is Eurylochus' first mention. It's the first time he's been named, which is pretty wild. But he's about to be a far more active player, so that's part of why. Buzzcut! Yeah, Buzzcut! As I would yell every time. Yeah, damn good for her. I know. She was like, bitch, I'm expensive. And he went, done. We'll pay it. Okay, Yuri. Was a buzz cut something that would be period accurate? No. Wait. Well, here's the thing. There's a reason that in a lot of these epics, we hear them called flowing-haired Achaeans. They liked longer hair because that longer hair was a sign and a symbol of basically being profitable, of being well off in life. If your head was shaved, you were likely a slave or you were being punished. So you did not want to be rocking a buzz cut. So that's why I was like, as much as I, like, the buzz cut doesn't bother me as much for some reason as a visual thing than, like, anachronistic glasses, it is good to note that these guys all would have had probably hair down kind of around here if you see a lot of art of these heroes. The men would have had probably hair down around here. Yeah. Was shaved hair also a sign of mourning? Not that I know of in the ancient times. At least in Greece. Shaved heads usually were pretty much reserved for slaves and, like, I think some criminals. So, exactly at Omen. They could afford to take care of their hair. Yeah, you had prosperity, you had wealth, you had position and prominence. You had the good hair. This is Odysseus with the good hair. Yeah, a sign of status and prowess, because it is harder to fight with long hair. It is true. Probably also why it only ended up staying at a certain length, because if you're all whacking at each other with things, it's probably inevitably going to get cut off in places. I shorn my hair in connection with funerary scenes. I don't quite remember that, but maybe if they might have cut like a lock, but I don't quite remember that. Was their hair curly like the statues? Probably. At least in a lot of my Greek relatives. Curls, waves, pretty common. If you also consider a lot of them live near the sea, salt tends to do that to your hair. So probably would have been some form of curly and wavy. The likelihood of them having like pin straight thin hair, probably not likely. It can be grabbed, it can get in your eyes. If you have long hair, you better show yourself worthy of it. Yes, exactly. He cut his hair. He cut like a part of his hair and put it on like, so it's never like you shaved your head. You might cut a lock. That's one thing. But like shaving it down to the scalp is different. Yeah, cuttings of locks of hair is one thing, yeah. But shorning it, like shearing it off into a buzz cut, you would not want to willingly do that. Similarly with tattoos, in case anybody is curious. The idea, if you were tattooed, if you were branded, again, it was usually a sign of slavery or criminality. So, like, you did not want to walk around with something like that. Would men braid it to keep it out of the way? Potentially. I'm not entirely sure. We have a much more understanding of braids in terms of female hairstyles than we really do of men's hairstyles. It would probably make sense that there was some form of braiding or plaiting that might happen, but it seems that an awful lot of the art that I've seen that's, done by historical illustrators or even of ancient art seems to be that they just let it flow free. Bad period to have alopecia. Not a great time to have that. Hair does tend to be culturally pretty important. Again, part of it being you can afford to take care of it. Which will end up being a little different when you get into the Roman era, because you'll find that the Roman men, it seems, tended to keep their hair a little more closely cropped, which is quite interesting. So he moved off with his 22 comrades, weeping, leaving us behind in tears as well. Now, the weeping and the leaving behind in tears as well here is the anticipation that maybe something might go wrong, and am I going to have to mourn for more people that I cannot actually bury again? Because let's remember, almost all the men who've been taken at this point, most recently, either were eaten by people or, in the case, went down at sea, and were speared like fish and taken away to be a meal. So, you have nothing to bury. Which, yeah, that would hurt them. It's not a lie, that would hurt them. Deep in tattoos were seen as branding, ritual paint on body. Yeah, since you can wash it off. Yeah, if you're doing ritual paint for something, that's one thing. But an actual, a permanent mark and a brand, that's different. Deep in the wooded glens, they came on Circe's palace, built of dressed stone on a cleared rise of land. Mountain wolves and lions were roaming round the grounds. She'd bewitched them herself. She gave them magic drugs. But they wouldn't attack my men. They just came pawing up around them, fawning, swishing their long tails, eager as hounds that fawn around their master, coming home from a feast. So yes, the animals are just animals. She's just basically given them catnip to make them high and friendly. Circe has the good shit. You want to party with Circe, you're probably going to have potentially a good time or a bad time. Not really sure. Yeah, she gave them the good shit. Can someone tell me where we're at? We are at, line 230, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 236-ish. Magical drugs. Oh, yeah, well, that's the thing. Circe is known for her ability with, herbs and potions and concoctions and enchantments. That's her shtick. It seems that quite a few of the children of Helios have that ability, so it's quite interesting. Who always brings back scraps to calm them down. So they came nuzzling round my men, lions, wolves with powerful claws. And the men cringed in fear at the sight of those strange, ferocious beasts, versus any white woman would roll up and be like, baby! I just think of that TikTok of white women ain't scared of nothing. And I'm like, yeah. We'd go, if not friend, why friend-shaped? I want to pet it. Did the ancient Greece use drugs recreationally, if no, which ones? I do not know exactly. I do know they liked to drink. In terms of recreational drugs, the closest you get would probably be stuff like the Sibyls and the Oracles at places like Delphi or the like. It seems like they might have been taking some sort of potential hallucinogen or the like to go into their trances and have, a prophecy. And then you have other places where it's considered to be entrances to the underworld where toxic gases come up out of the ground. So it's okay, that's not really on purpose, so it's not recreational. In terms of recreational use, I'm not entirely certain. I've not read enough on the topic to really give a clear answer. I know. White women sees danger floof. Caddy! Exactly. High on fumes in that case, yeah. That's if dangerous, why fluffy? Yeah, she does have the good stuff. Yeah, okay, Derpy in K-pop Demon Hunters is just a sweet little baby. That is just a kitty. Correct. Welcome to the white woman loving the Danger Floof Club. Always, Mary. We always in the loving the Danger Floof Club. Honey, are you getting hot? Maybe you should sit down. Off the chair. Well, that thought was offensive to her. Okay. All right, then. But still they paused at her doors, the nymph with lovely braids, Circe, and deep inside they heard her singing, lifting her spellbinding voice as she glided back and forth at her great immortal loom, her enchanting web a shimmering glory only goddesses can weave. Polites, captain of armies, took command, the closest, most devoted man I had. Friends, there's someone inside, plying a great loom, and how she sings. Enthralling. The whole house is echoing to her song. goddess or woman? Let's call her out now. Polites and Esther's son share the same epithet. Is there significance and intentional parallel here, or is this just a filler epithet? Captain of armies just means he would have commanded troops. It's just saying, he's like a lieutenant. He would have commanded troops. So, that's all. Yeah, I know, Peg, but you're panting, so get down there. It's cooler. Don't look at me like that. You're fine. Odysseus' line being one of only sons thing. It's in book 17. Okay, so we're not going to skip ahead and talk about that yet. Book 17 or, in the that's way ahead, guys. Polites, yeah, who, by the way, is still alive. Oh, and by the way, he's the one who said, yeah, maybe we should talk to Circe and go in there. So really, the whole them turning into pigs? That's Polites' fault. Yeah, what? I never stood a chance. I know, Peg, but you're panting. You're hot. Okay, well, fine. Fine. We'll do it this way. So that my face isn't blocked by the chat. All right. We'll try this again. Yeah, that's what you get with open arms. We will not talk about Polites here. So he urged, and the men called out and hailed her. She opened her gleaming doors at once and stepped forth, inviting them all in. And in they went, all innocents. Only Eurylochus stayed behind. He sensed a trap. Peg, seriously, for God's sake, calm down, please. Calm down, thank you. I shall endure the very flames of Mordor for uppies. It's true. She ushered them in to sit on high-backed chairs. Then she mixed them a potion, cheese, barley, and the pale honey mulled in Pramnian wine. But into the brew she stirred her wicked drugs, to wipe from their memories any thought of home. Once they drained the bowls she filled, suddenly she struck with her wand, drove them into her pigsties, all of them bristling into swine with grunts, snouts, even their bodies, yes, and only the men's minds stayed steadfast as before. So off they went to their pens, sobbing, squealing, as Circe flung them acorns, cornel nuts, and mast, common fodder for hogs that root and roll in mud. Excuse you. Are you okay? So, yes, bad Xenia. Yeah, Spirited Away pig parent moment. Bad Xenia. Pramnian wine, just a type of wine from a place. How are their minds steadfast if she drugged them to forget home? It's driving away thoughts of wanting to return home. You can forget about wanting to return home and still remember that you're a person. If that makes sense. Okay, Peg, seriously? No. Forget, no stress. How are their minds still the same? Well, it's similarly with the lotus. It just makes them forget. You gotta just get them away from there. And we don't know how long that lasts. The idea is she's catching them off guard. That's the whole thing. And we are weaponizing Xenia. Absolutely. Miyazaki probably took influence from a moment like this and from other things. I mean, the idea is also, you will see later interpretations, a lot of times they talk about being this is all about drunkenness, because it's really when they drank the wine that they had a problem. Like, the food itself wasn't poisoned. It was the wine. Peg, seriously? Is there any way for the crew to save themselves from becoming pigs if they didn't drink, if they hadn't gone in there? It's really the only way. Okay, seriously, Peg. Up. It's a problem. I'm sorry, girlie. We can't do this today. It's too hot for it. Anyway, what was the motivation here for doing this? Because she can. Truly because she can. Circe kind of doesn't really have a motivation other than she can. It's not good behavior. It's not good Xenia. It's part of why the rest of the encounter is going to go the way that it does. She just does it because. It's what she does. It's just a thing that she does. She fucks with potions. She likes to really fuck around with men. She likes to change them. It's because she can. Like a Pinocchio and the boys turning into donkeys 3/4 of the way through the movie. Yeah, as like I said, later classical scholarship, and I think even Roman scholarship, tries to make a point about how it's a commentary on drunkenness, but we're not entirely sure if that's exactly what was going on in the earlier understandings of the text. But that's certainly later. And when are Greek gods known for their good behavior? I mean, true. They do stupid shit all the time. If not pig, why pig-shaped? Seriously, yeah, I think Peg would choose to walk into a desert in search of cuddles with him. I know, she would. Peg, you're killing me, but it's too hot. So you're not panting anymore when you're down there. Or you're stressed. I really don't know what your problem is, kiddo. Seriously does a little trolling. I mean, yeah. Fine, come on up. Up. Mother is cold. Mother is without love and heart. Mother cares not for heartbreak. I know. Wicked jugs. Oh, man. I kind of love that, though. Wine from Promo. Ancient Greek champagne, basically. Yeah. Is it less drunkenness or more gluttony? That gets them in trouble? In this case, it would probably be drunkenness because the issue comes when they drink the wine. It's not so much the food, but the wine. I know. Peg really does. Yeah. I know, sweetheart. You're fine. We'll just sit like this. Because that maybe that'll be better. I don't know. I mean, I need to... Her cooling blanket, unfortunately, she had a little accident on it, so I have to run it down into the wash, but I can't do that right now. Certainly got Elpenor in trouble. Yeah, especially a part of where that scholarship originates from is like what continues and happens to Elpenor. So, there's that. Could Odysseus have called upon Zeus to settle the pig issue since he's a god of hospitality, or would Zeus have avoided getting involved because Circe's a goddess? He might have just avoided getting involved because he didn't feel like getting involved. This presents itself almost more like a test because Odysseus has the chance to potentially do something. But again, you can call on the gods. They may not necessarily answer. So it's like very important to never think that you can just call on a god and they'll solve your problems. In his case, it's also like, does Zeus feel like answering? And, Zeus is currently still a little petty at the Greeks because he was technically kind of supporting the Trojans. Like, he's been sending them bad weather. Like, Zeus isn't necessarily on their side here. Yeah, not my monkeys, not my circus. Like, I'm not involved. Not my pigs, not my island. So, yeah, let her have hobbies as a treat after the Medea. It's just her hobby, guys. Zeus still salty. Back Eurylochus ran to our swift black ship to tell the disaster our poor friends had faced. But try as he might, he couldn't get a word out. Numbing sorrow had stunned the man to silence. Tears welled in his eyes, his heart possessed by grief. We assailed him with questions, all at our wits' end, till at last he could recount the fate our friends had met. Off we went through the brush, Captain, as you commanded. Deep in the wooded glens we came on Circe's palace, built of dressed stone on a cleared rise of land. Someone inside was playing a great loom, and how she sang. It was in a high, clear voice. Would any other god come down for a Xenia violation or only Zeus? Only Zeus. That was within his domain. Goddess or woman, we called out and hailed her. She opened her gleaming doors at once and stepped forth, inviting us all in. And in we went, all innocents. But I stayed behind. I sensed a trap. Suddenly, all vanished. Blotted out, not one face showed again, though I sat there, keeping watch a good long time. At that report, line 283, so just in case of that royalty we immediately constructed was that, why is wheat inviting us all in, and in we went, all innocent. We, he's just talking about the men. He's like, yeah, we all went in, except for me, I stayed out. That's just, I don't really think it's that weird of a translation choice. It's like saying, what'd you do? Oh, well, we all went inside. I mean, except for me, I stayed out. That's basically what he's saying. I know, might have been better for them to stay as pigs. It's very true. Did Circe introduce herself? Why did he know it was Circe's palace? Please remember, this is Odysseus telling the story. Odysseus is narrating the story to the Phaeacians, so Odysseus, in retrospect, knows this is Circe. Now, if Circe didn't introduce herself, then yeah, Odysseus is just using that information and saying, hey, that's what Eurylochus said to me. But if Circe did introduce herself, well, then Odysseus wasn't there for the moment she introduced herself, so maybe she did. And he's just kind of, why is the grammar came on Circe's palace? Deep in the wooded glens, we came on Circe's palace. You can use on in place of came upon Circe's palace. Same idea. It's interchangeable in English. We all were invited. They went. I stayed back. Yeah, basically. At that report, I slung the hefty bronze blade of my silver-studded sword around my shoulder, slung my bow on it too, and told our comrade, "Lead me back the same way that you came." But he flung both arms around my knees and pleaded, begging me with his tears and winging words. "Don't force me back there, Captain. King. Leave me here on the spot. You will never return yourself. I swear you'll never bring back a single man alive. Quick, cut and run with the rest of us here. We can still escape the fatal death." Oh, Eurylochus. You motherfucking coward. That's what's happening here, and that's what any Greek, that's what the Phaeacians would hear as the audience in text, and that is what any ancient Greek audience would hear. They'd be like, "You sniveling coward. What is your problem? You're on the clock. What is wrong with you? Get your ass in line and go back." Especially because right now, so far as what we have said Odysseus has been hearing from Eurylochus, I sensed a trap. Suddenly they all vanished. Not one face showed again, though I sat there waiting a while. So he didn't even see them turn into pigs. He's just like, well, they went in and they didn't come out. It's like, you coward. What? You sniveling, snot-nosed coward. What are you doing? Especially because in this moment, all he wants to do is stay safe with the ships, and he doesn't want to follow his king. And Odysseus is like, yeah, that ain't a bad look. I don't know what is. It is not. So I left him behind because he's a little bitch. No, literally, this is such a bad look. And the fact that he did it by flinging the arms around his knees and just like sniveling and begging and pleading, it's like, what the fuck is your problem, dude? Like, I don't agree with the cowardice from Odysseus, I mean. What, that Odysseus is cowardly? I don't think Odysseus is cowardly. I think that right now what Eurylochus is showing is absolute cowardice. Because Odysseus is like, all right, we're going to go back. And Eurylochus is like, I don't wanna. Eurylochus, we're running along. I never understood this. Eurylochus' instrument is the crew. You're asking something about Epic. I'm not answering questions about Epic here. This is the Odyssey. If he'd actually seen them turn into pigs, isn't that a sign they invaded a goddess's domain? Usually when people get turned into animals in Greek myth, they did a big no-no. If he'd actually seen them, but from what at least Eurylochus recounts, we don't actually know if he did see them turn into pigs. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but somehow Odysseus knows this. It's likely because he's going to find out kind of after the fact. No, he's thinking Eurylochus is a coward. I'm not saying that Odysseus is necessarily thinking Eurylochus is a coward. The audience would, though. The audience would at the time. They'd be like, what is your problem, bro? Like, he doesn't dwell into that he kind of understands that something happened. Odysseus can kind of understand that something happened, but he's not pleased. And I think in the way that he continues with the lines and also in the actions of Eurylochus, it's pretty clear that at that point, Eurylochus kind of takes a little moment downward in Odysseus' opinion, but the audience would absolutely see him as a coward. Odysseus is painting him as, getting on your knees, basically pulling a borderline suppliant pose, screaming that you don't want to come back, when all you're saying is that they went in and I never saw them again. Like, that could be anything, number one, especially, but it's also like, this is your job. Like, this is what you are here to do, is to deal with this shit. Yeah, we're dealing with a lot of shit, but like, oh, okay, bro. Like, yeah, I get something happened, but get your ass up. It is also, we can show the fact that we did talk about Eurylochus and call him Brave Eurylochus initially. And then Eurylochus comes in and starts basically pulling out the suppliant bit. A borderline. He's almost taking the suppliant pose, which would be huge. That puts a moral imperative on Odysseus where he's kind of fucked and is like kind of has to acquiesce to Eurylochus in that moment, which is part of where the way that he speaks comes in. But it's just like, okay, great. Your reaction is not what I'm loving in this moment. But the audience absolutely listening would have been like, you bitch, get up. But I shot back. Eurylochus, stay right here, eating, drinking, safe by the black ship. I must be off. Necessity drives me on. Hence I say, I don't think he's loving Eurylochus's reaction. Does he necessarily think immediately this is the biggest coward that ever lived? Maybe not. He knows that he's a good fighter, but he's just like, okay, fine. You stay here safe. I've got shit to do. Could it also be that Odie is making this encounter up to paint Eurylochus in a bad light to put himself in a better light? The likelihood of him fully making this up is no. You don't really lie when it comes to encounters that involve a god. That's gonna... At what point does it come down to this is a goddess, you don't fuck with a goddess, though? Nobody... I mean, again, they don't know where they are. So, this isn't even a... Okay. I had to say this a lot during the last book, and I will say this again. Please remember, this is Odysseus telling the story in retrospect. Does he know this is Circe's island? He doesn't. They don't know who lives here. Nobody has found out yet. So none of them know this is a goddess. None of them know that this is Circe. Like, they're in the dark here in terms of who is here, what are they up to, what's their shtick. They've just been through a whole bunch of giant cannibals, and the closest they got to interacting with godlike figures was basically on Aeaea, but even then, those aren't necessarily gods. So they don't know that this is a goddess. They're not sure, because we don't know what happened to the men in the palace. Eurylochus just says, well, they vanished. We called out goddess or mortal who lives here. They don't know. So this isn't a case of, well, it's just a goddess, we shouldn't fuck with it. They don't know. So always remember that he's telling the story in retrospect. He's adding a lot of extra details explaining where he is and all of that because he's setting up his audience of the Phaeacians. And you could say Homer is therefore setting up the audience to whom is listening this story that, hey, by the way, this is where he is. These are all the details. Did I know this at the time when I was there? No. But I'm telling the story now, so I'm gonna tell you now. Oh, this conversation with Yuri is cowardice. You're talking about this is a goddess, you don't fuck with the god. Sorry, Jesse. Could it be that Odie made this encounter up? We don't know. Again, the likelihood of Odysseus straight up lying about stuff that happened, it kind of makes no sense. Again, you can exaggerate, and that's a tendency we saw that was brought with Menelaus in book 4. But straight out lying? Probably not. Especially if you're trying to tell the tale of your Nostos, which is adding to your Kleos. You don't want to lie about that, because someone will clock you on it, and probably it'll be a god. No, Polites says, is it goddess or human? And even Eurylochus comes back and says, goddess or human. We don't know what you are. Yeah, making up an encounter with a god of any kind, even tangentially, is just asking to be smoked. Especially because we're about to have Hermes show up, too. So, there is a limit to the unreliable narrator. Like, this idea that everybody rolls in and says, oh, Odie's an unreliable narrator, so obviously he lied about everything. It's like, no. Like, calm down. Yes, you can have the element of the unreliable narrator, but that doesn't automatically mean everything he says is a lie. Calm down a bit. Oh, calm down. No, calm down. Calm down. Okay. Leaving the ship and shore, I headed inland, clambering up through hushed, entrancing glades until as I was nearing the halls of Circe, skilled in spells, approaching her palace, Hermes, god of the golden wand, crossed my path, and he looked for all the world like a young man sporting his first beard, just in the prime and warm pride of youth, and grasped me by the hand, and said, and asked me kindly, where are you going now, my unlucky friend? Trekking over the hills alone in some unfamiliar country? Your friend are all in there in Circe's palace, cooped like wine, hawked by the jaw in the styes. You come to set them free? Well, I warn you, you won't get home yourself. You'll stay right here, trapped with all the rest. But wait, I can save you. Free you from the great danger. Look. Ta-da. Here is a potent drug. Take it to Circe's halls. Its power alone will shield you from the fatal day. Let me tell you of all the witches' subtle craft. She'll mix you a potion laced the brew with drugs, and she'll be powerless to bewitch you. Even so, this magic herb I give you will fight her spells. Now, here's your plan of action, step by step. The moment Circe strikes with her long, thin wand, you draw your sharp sword sheathed at your hip, you rush at her as fast as you can to run her through. But don't refuse the goddess's bed. Not then. Not if she's to release your friends and treat you well yourself. But have her swear the binding oath of the blessed gods. She'd never plot some new intrigue to harm you once you lie there naked. Never unman you, strip away your courage. Okay, hey great-grandson, wanna do drugs? Yeah, that's kind of what Hermes shows up as. So, if Odie lied about Circe, would she be able to hear herself know about it? Is she that kind of goddess? Tales of that would make their way round. The gods usually find out stuff. Hey, my free. What is this accent? We turned him into like a 1930s, 40s radio man. We've decided the transatlantic accent. Yes, this is my very bad transatlantic accent. And so we decided, this is how I read him on the thing with Calypso. So I'm like, you know what? He's still our radio man. So let's talk a bit about, we're going to talk a bit about Molly in a second because it hasn't been name dropped yet. But I want to talk about this part very specific. Also, I think he would speak rapidly because he's our god of messengers. This bit where he says, don't refuse the goddess's bed, not then, not if she's to release your friends and treat you well yourself, but have her swear the binding oath of the blessed gods. So I wanted to talk about this because we did talk about in the chapter with Calypso, which is book 5, that it's very clear, Homer is very explicit that those are encounters involving a lack of consent. In fact, the Greek, as Mariana could tell you, and if you go to the description on my Not Sorry for Loving You video, I gave you some information that Mariana had given me where the Greek makes it even more clear that Odysseus has no choice in terms of the essay that basically happens in this chapter. So, you then get to this, and you have to, and I'm sure some people wonder, questions of consent when it comes to what's happening here. Because it can sound like, at first glance, Hermes is telling him, well, you can't say no. But that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, she's gonna try to seduce you and take you to bed. Don't immediately say no. What you're going to do is get a promise out of her that she will not hurt you or any of your men. Now, once you get that promise, you can kind of say no all you want. You can do whatever you want. He just assumes Odysseus is going to sleep with her. Why not? Well, this is technically still in line with Xenia. She is the woman of the house. She's an unmarried goddess. She can offer herself to Odysseus. That'd be totally in line. The issue is more the fact that even if that can seem like, oh, this is part of, like, we would consider it could be considered proper Xenia, she's already weaponized Xenia. She can't necessarily be trusted to not be trying to pull yet another trick, that the seduction and the offer to take him to bed is in bad faith. So Hermes is saying, get your ducks in a row first. Get the promise from her that cannot be broken. And take her to bed if you want to. Like, yeah, basically, whatever you're gonna do with Circe, because it's like, he's not going to blame him if he sleeps with Circe. Like, frankly, if Circe offered herself, it'd be like, yo, it's a good day. And you were into it, that's a good day. Just make sure there's no way that's going to come around and bite you in the ass, and she's not going to weaponize that against you later. So this is not about consent. This is about making sure she can't turn around and bite you in the ass the way she clearly has already proven that she will. So, I wanted to get that out of the way because I have seen that question posed to me several times, and I said, well, when you initially read it, it can seem like he's saying, but you don't have a choice. But what he's really saying is, don't go doing something like that where you're going to be in a vulnerable position and where the blood ain't going to be in your brain, it's going to be somewhere else. Get that promise out of her. It is transaction. It can be seen as transactional, I guess, but at the point, once he gets the promise, Odysseus doesn't necessarily have to sleep with her if he doesn't want to. The power's kind of back in his hands at that point. And yeah, it becomes way more clear when you continue the full encounter. Was there any mention of Hermes having had a relationship with Circe at some point? Like in the Madeline Miller book, I'm assuming is where you're getting that? There might have been. But all I've ever really known, from ancient sources that is just that he appears in this myth. I've never known them to have anything else. I really do think Madeline Miller invented that and put it into her novel Circe because she wanted to expand on like why Hermes just sort of shows up on her island. So I don't think they did ever have a relationship. I've never seen another ancient source that comes to mind that says that they had some kind of relationship beforehand. But again, don't quote me, there's a lot of myth. But so far as I know, I do think that Madeline Miller took the idea that Hermes shows up here in the Odyssey and expanded on it so she could write her novel. Yeah, if you're gonna feed the lioness, make sure she ain't going to eat your face kind of vibe. Yeah, it's like, look, if you're gonna, do it smart. Just FYI. And you will need this magical drug. Molly, here is your magic object you will get a one-time use of. You need it because you will not survive without it. Again, similarly to how they kitted up Perseus to the gills so he could go kill the Medusa. Similarly, here's this magical plant that humans cannot touch. You're gonna need it. Could Hermes show up because he saw his great-great-grandson about to fuck up without help? I mean, he could have. Hermes never gives a reason for why he shows up. He just does. The gods don't always need a reason for showing up, and it's not always related to family. Again, these gods have often quite a few mortal children running around, so whether it's because of a family connection or not, Hermes never makes it clear. It may not even be because of that. Hermes does what he wants, to a degree. With that, the giant killer handed over the magic herb, pulling it from the earth, and Hermes showed me all its name and nature. Its root is black, and its flower white as milk, and the gods call it Molly. Dangerous for a mortal man to pluck from the soil, but not for deathless gods. All lies within their power. So, let's talk about Molly. This flower, this plant that's said to have black roots and a white flower. Obviously, as we know, mortals cannot touch it. It's deadly to them. So, there are several ancient writers, which, yes, I will be talking about the pronunciation and the infamous moment I had in the Circe saga where everybody came at me for pointing this out. Ancient writers note that the derivation of the word Molly is the Greek word malos, and that's M-A with like a little kind of like house on top of it, L-O-S, which speaks to the hard battle that relates to the plant's origins. So this plant originated during the Gigantomachia. So during the Gigantomachia, one of the various Gigantes, whose name was Piccolos, tried to run away from the battle and ended up on Aeaea. So he realized that Circe was there and decided to chase her off her own island. But unfortunately for him, her daddy Helios noticed, and so he rolled up and slew Piccolos. Now, Molly, this plant, sprouted up from the area of soil that was drenched in the Gigantes' blood, which is why it is said to have black roots. Now, the reason it has a white flower, it is said to be coming from the fact that either it's the fact that it's, the sun who killed him, and obviously you know that the sun, to them, this bright light in the sky, it's white. Obviously, don't go look at the sun. Let's not stare directly at the sun, guys. And that's the one who killed him. And I think some other sources, while talking about this, might have said it was because, Circe went, pale or white with shock that, she was being chased off her own island, and this is what she witnessed. I think it makes more sense that it's the sun who killed him kind of thing. But, yeah. Helios does not tolerate nonsense towards his children. He was like, oh, I'm sorry. My daughter's island that she picked out, you're trying to chase her off her own place? Yeah, no, I ain't having that shit. And so he slayed Piccolos. And from that, you end up getting Molly. Now, I do know that lots of scholars have tried to connect it to an actual plant, but so far as we know, there's no actual plant that this, correlates to. Han later writers Molly is meant to be garlic. I've seen some people reference it as similar to an onion bulb or garlic. I do not know where that comes from, though. I don't specifically know exactly where that comes from. Again, it might be part of how they were trying to link it to a plant, like an actual plant, but so far as we know, it's not an actual plant. Besides these two stories, is Molly present in other epics that we know of? Not that I know of. Garlic comes from the gods, checks out. But yeah, no, not that I know of. This is the only time that Molly shows up in any of the myth. To argue that it might be something Homer could have made up, potentially. I mean, no, but Molly, it really only pops up in this myth. I mean, it seems it only grows on Aeaea, because obviously it's coming from the soil that was drenched in the blood of this Gigantes, so it's not going to grow anywhere else. Garlic bread is divine, checks out. I mean, makes sense. I have heard the thing about it being similar to shallots, onions, or garlic, but that's way later scholarship again, where they're trying to connect it to an actual plant. When so far as we know, it's not a real plant. Now Hermes went his way to the steep heights of Olympus, over the island's woods, while I, just approaching the halls of Circe, my heart a heaving storm at every step, paused at her doors, the nymph with lovely braids. I stood and shouted to her there. She heard my voice, she opened her gleaming doors at once and stepped forth, inviting me in, and in I went, all anguish now. She led me in to sit on a silver-studded chair, ornately carved, with a stool to rest my feet. In a golden bowl she mixed a potion for me to drink, stirring her poison in her heart a swirl with bad intentions. And then she passed it on. I drank it down, but it never worked its spell. She struck with her wand, and "Now," she cried, "off to your sty, you swine, and wallow with your friends." But I drew my sharp sword sheathed at my hip, and rushed her fast as if to run her through. She screamed, slid under my blade, hugged my knees with a flood of warm tears, and a burst of winging words. I've heard snowdrops is another option I've heard from Ellie. Again, they keep trying to link it to an actual plant. It's a made-up plant. She has a wand. Yes! Rather like Hermes, she too has some sort of wand, some sort of thing that she uses. Who are you? Where are you from? Your city, your parents. I'm wonder-struck. You drank my drugs. You're not bewitched. Never has any other man withstood my potion. Never once it's passed his lips and he has drunk it down. You've a mind in you. No magic can enchant. You must be Odysseus, man of twists and turns. Hermes the giant killer, god of the golden wand, he always said you'd come. Homeward bound from Troy in your swift black ship. Come, sheathe your sword. Let's go to bed together. Mount my bed and mix in the magic work of love. We'll breed deep trust between us. So she enticed, but I fought back, still wary. Circe, how dare you tell me to treat you with any warmth? You who turned my men to swine in your own house, and now you hold me here as well, teeming with treachery. You lure me to your room to mount your bed, so once I lie there naked, you'll unman me, strip me of my courage. Mount your bed? Not for all the world. Not until you consent to swear, goddess, a binding oath, you'll never plot some new intrigue to harm me. So we are talking a binding oath. We are talking about a swearing on the river Styx. Like, he's getting a binding oath. It's better than home with it. Sorry, can you read the part of the bed again, the Circe one? The parts where she speaks about the bed, Mariana? Come, sheathe your sword, let's go to bed together, mount my bed, and mix in the magic work of love. We'll breed deep trust between us. I'm now curious. Mariana is probably going to comment on the translation here. I'll be curious. Straight away, she began to swear the oath that I required. Never she'd do me harm, and when she'd finished, then, at last, I mounted Circe's gorgeous bed. Okay, Peg, you're sitting up, honey. Let's go to bed together. In Greek, it's actually our bed. Ooh, she's already putting in the hour. Why would Circe agree to take in the oath? She wants the Odysseus dick. Why not? And in a way, she's trying to set Xenia right, because she's figured, like, ah, shit, I heard you were going to come. Maybe he could call to Zeus. Maybe shit could happen. She's like, shit, nobody's ever been able to call me out on my shit before. So, as opposed to Odysseus saying, oh, yes, because she says, let's mount. Oh, okay, interesting. Come now. I mean, we'll breed deep trust between us. I mean, saying you'll breed trust is saying, like, we'll create trust between us. But also, yeah, well, we do know apparently she births him 3 children. So, there's that. You know what they say about guys with big thighs. I'm sorry. Might as well commit to the bit. Is she really that thirsty? Is just initially it's an attempt at a power play. After that, I think she's just like, might as well make him useful. Why not? I mean, at this point, as an immortal, you're playing kind of a lot of a game of why not, right? At the same time, her handmaids bustled through the halls, 4 in all, who performed the goddess's household tasks. Nymphs, daughters born of the springs and groves and the sacred rivers running down to open sea. One draped the chairs with fine crimson covers over the seats she'd spread with linen cloths below. A second drew up silver tables before the chairs and laid out golden trays to hold the bread. A third mulled heady, heart-warming wine in a silver bowl and set out golden cups. A fourth brought water and lit a blazing fire beneath a massive cauldron. If Circe is a goddess, can she choose her appearance? So could she be attractive to many different people, maybe even change her appearance? No. Well, Circe is not a goddess on the same level as, like, the Olympians. The Olympians are really the only ones who seem to be able to actually show up in disguise. She is always just how she is. She mentioned Hermes told her he would show up on line 366. It's probably why he was there, because of a sort of prophecy saying Odysseus would be there. Yeah, he probably was like, I did say you would come. By the way, hey, great-grandson, want to do drugs? So we're trying to draw parallels, contrast between Circe and Calypso in regards to their braided hair. Yes. The correlation or the comparisons that are made between Circe and Calypso are seemingly on purpose. There's a lot of scholarship on it, number one. And you will also find that actually a lot of people mix up Circe and Calypso because of some of the similarities and how their storylines go. And a lot of Scholia will talk about the kind of like poetic parallel trajectories kind of these characters and their function within the story. So yeah, Calypso and Circe are often compared. How did he not explode seeing her true form? This is not an Olympian, guys. This is not an Olympian. Please remember the Olympians are on another level. This is just Circe. She's a minor goddess. It's not the same thing. Prophecy, or are they kikiing? Yeah, exactly. This is not a case of one of the Chronaides like showing their true forms. This is just a minor goddess. Because Aeaea and the others, like, they live perfectly fine on their kingdoms. They're not, like, hiding their true forms or anything like that. Ma'am? The water heated soon, and once it reached the boil in the glowing bronze, she eased me into a tub and bathed me from the cauldron, mixing the hot and cold to suit my taste, showering head and shoulders down until she'd washed away the spirit-numbing exhaustion from my body. The bathing finished, rubbing me sleek with oil, throwing warm fleece and a shirt around my shoulders, she led me in to sit on a silver-studded chair, ornately carved, with a stool to rest my feet. A maid brought water soon in a graceful golden pitcher, and over a silver basin tipped it out so I might rinse my hands, then pulled a gleaming table to my side. A staid housekeeper brought on bread to serve me, appetizers aplenty too, lavish with her bounty. She pressed me to eat. I had no taste for food. I just sat there, mind wandering, far away, lost in grim forebodings. Which it's like, finally someone with bread! Bring on the gluten! What are we talking about? We have has head and shoulders. Oh, has head and shoulders. Oh, the brand. Bread! Friend-shaped! The hour yours, quite the finesse to signal non-cheating nature of the ordeal, also after the oath, and then I went upon the very beautiful bed of Circe. Yeah, again. Let's also note, we'll say this is not cheating. Most people in the Discord know this, because we've had this conversation. This is not cheating. The reason this is not cheating is because we are not in Odysseus' marriage bed. This is Circe's bed. Now, had he brought Circe back to Ithaca and slept with her in that great olive tree bed, that's a different story. That's cheating. They didn't go to a Coldplay show. That's so true. see, where were we? Ah, yes. As soon as Circe saw me, huddled, not touching my food, immersed in sorrow, she sidled near with a coaxing winged word. Odysseus, why just sit there, struck dumb, eating your heart out, not touching food or drink? Suspect me of still more treachery? Nothing to fear. Haven't I just sworn my solemn binding oath? So she asked, but I protested. Circe, how could any man in his right mind endure the taste of food and drink before he'd freed his comrades in arms and looked them in the eyes? If you really want me to eat and drink, set them free, my beloved comrades. Let me feast my eyes. Peg? Honey? I love you. It is too hot up here. Sweetie, you need to get off this chair. Come on, off, down. You can't do this. We cannot do this. Here, take the blanket if that's what you so desperately want. But I'm not falling for this again. This is too much. It's not good for you. Hi. Yeah, shake it off. You're fine. So I demanded. Circe strode on through the halls and out, her wand held high in hand, and, flinging open the pens, drove forth my men, who looked like full-grown swine. Facing her, there they stood as she went along the ranks, anointing them one by one with some new magic oil. And look, the bristles grown by the first wicked drug that Circe gave them slipped away from their limbs, and they turned men again, younger than ever, taller by far, more handsomer to the eye, and yes, they all knew me at once, and each man grasped my hands, and a painful longing for tears overcame us all. A terrible sobbing echoed through the house. The goddess herself was moved, and standing by me warmly urged me on, a lustrous goddess now. Royal son of Laertes, Odysseus, tried and true, go at once to your ship at the water's edge, haul her straight up on the shore first, and stow your cargo, and running gear in caves. Then back you come, and bring your trusty crew. Her urging won my stubborn spirit over. Down I went to the swift ship at the water's edge, and there on the decks I found my loyal crew, consumed with grief, and weeping live warm tears. Can you imagine? They're all just like, well, great, now Odysseus is gone. What's going on? She knows his dad's name. Yes, she already mentioned it. She said, you are Laertes' son. You're, the man of twists and turns, whatever. Odysseus, Laertes' son. Hermes said you would come. For us, Mad talks to the people. For Peg, Mad talks like a screen. Talks to a screen. I know. You're fine. I know you want to be involved. It's just too hot up here. You're panting too much. Lie down. Do you want a carrot? Pause. We will give her a carrot. Maybe that will help. Would you like a carrot, sweetheart? Come on. Oh, you also need that. Bribery always works. Bribery always works. Yeah. It does. It always works. She has been given the carrot. She demanded her tribute. Yeah. Don't you dare try and bring that up here. It's not happening. It's not happening, Peg. I will block you. None of this. Oh yeah, there we go. But now, as calves in stalls, when cows come home, droves of them herded back from field to farmyard once they've grazed their fill, as all their young calves came frisking out to meet them, bucking out of their pens, lowing nonstop, jostling, rushing round their mothers. So my shipmates there, at the sight of my return, came pressing round me now, streaming tears, so deeply moved in their hearts they felt as if they'd made it back to their own land, their city, Ithaca's rocky soil where they were bred and reared. And through their tears their words went winging home. "You're back again, my king! How thrilled we are, as if we'd reached our country, Ithaca, at last. But come, tell us the fate of our comrades met." Still, I replied, with a timely word of comfort. "Let's haul our ship straight up on the shore first, stow our cargo and running gear in caves, then hurry, all of you. Come along with me to see our friends in the magic halls of Circe, eating and drinking. The feast flows on forever." So I said, and they jumped to do my bidding. Only Eurylochus tried to hold my shipmates back. His mutinous outbursts aimed at one and all. "Poor fools, where are we running now? Why are we tempting fate? Why stumble blindly down to Circe's halls? Shall it turn us all into pigs or wolves or lions made to guard that palace of hers? By force, I tell you, just as the Cyclops trapped our comrades in his lair with hot-headed Odysseus right beside them all. Thanks to this man's rashness, they died too." Ooh, you really gonna say that with your full chest, Eurylochus? You gonna say that with your full chest? He really said that with his full chest. Why didn't he think for them to escape? Why escape if you're gonna actually be treated well in a minor goddess's home? Oh my god, don't leave yet. Rekit, resupply, take a rest. You've been battered around. Take the break. It's like, oh, he did not. I told you, Eurylochus is a fucking problem in the Odyssey. And this continues on, where again, as much as I know Mariana, oh, he was so scared, he couldn't even, he was so scared he couldn't even say that. Yeah, that's the thing, is where, as much as you say it's like, Odysseus doesn't see him as a coward, I'm like, I think he's definitely side-eyeing Eurylochus' attitude, where he comes back on his knees, sniveling and crying, and then now here he is being like, I don't trust my king, fuck our king, he's the reason our friends are dead. If I'm Odysseus, again, my opinion of Eurylochus is tanking so hard during this encounter. Surely the 4 of his actions won't shadow later on. Yeah, that is... So, because if he says now that they were transformed, he must have seen them. Because Odysseus has not said anything about that. Very true. Very true. Very true. Now the truth all coming out. So Eurylochus, you did see an awful lot. So now you're just deciding to be a pain in the ass. Eurylochus is a pain in the ass. So he declared, and I had half a mind to draw the sharp sword from beside my hip and slice his head off, tumbling down in the dust, close kin that he was. But comrades checked me, each man trying to calm me left and right. Captain, we'll leave him here if you command, just where he is, just sit and guard the ship. Lead us on to the magic halls of Circe. I mean, honestly, I'd be like, oh, you don't want to come? Okay, you know what, Eurylochus? You can stay here at the ship. You can stay here. You know what? Fine. Sit here in timeout. With that, up from the ship and shore, they headed inland. Nor did Eurylochus malinger by the hull. He straggled behind the rest, dreading the sharp blast of my rebuke. No, not the Philoctetes treatment. Yeah, no, Eurylochus was like, oh, shit. I guess we're all gonna go then. Okay. Ugh, Eurylochus, he's such an eye-roll character in the Odyssey. He really is. All the while, Circe had bathed my other comrades in her palace, caring and kindly, rubbed them sleek with oil and decked them out in fleecy coats and shirts. We found them all together, feasting in her halls. Once we had recognized each other, gazing face to face, we all broke down and wept. And the house resounding now. And Circe, the lustrous one, came toward me pleading. Royal son of Laertes, Odysseus, man of action, no more tears now. Calm these tides of sorrow. Well, I know what pains you bore on the swarming sea, what punishment you endured from hostile men on land.
But come now, eat your food and drink your wine, till the same courage fills your chests, now as then, when you first set sail from native land, from rocky Ithaca. Now you are burnt out husks, your spirits haggard, sere, always brooding over your wanderings long and hard, your hearts never lifting with any joy. You've suffered far too much.
Basically, you're all fucking burnt out of shit. Take a break.
Take a break.
Yeah, big talk till he was left all alone. Eurylochus is a coward. It's kind of funny she sings considering how she traumatized everyone. Yeah, but she's saying, look, we're all cool now. Take a break. Like, you guys all kind of look like shit. I mean, they all kind of looked like shit before she re-traumatized them some more, but you know. Eurylochus saying, Circe, greet them warmly like the guy who got tricked by the singing frog from Looney Tunes. Spa day with Circe. I want manis, and I want petties, and I want a facial. I want food. Cool. All she had to do was say food. I'd have rolled up. I'd have rolled over. I'd be like, free food? I'm in. So she enticed and won our battle-hardened spirits over. And there we sat at ease, day in, day out, till a year had run its course, feasting on sides of meat and draughts of heady wine. But then, when the year was gone, and the seasons wheeled by, and the months waned, and the long days came round again, my loyal comrades took me aside and prodded. Captain, this is madness. High time you thought of your own home at last. If it really is your fate to make it back alive and reach your well-built house and native land. Basically, okay, bro, we thought we were only going to relax for like a week. It's been a year. Their urging brought my stubborn spirit round. So all that day, till the sun went down, we sat and feasted on sides of meat and heady wine. Then when the sun had set and night came on, the men lay down to sleep in the shadowed halls. But I went up to that luxurious bed of Circe's, hugged her by the knees. And the goddess heard my winging supplication. Again, all of these poses of suppliants, which is part of why I say, again, the thing with Eurylochus, he comes in and does the whole pleading like a suppliant. And it's like, bro, what the fuck? Why are you putting a moral imperative on me to do what you ask? Which is why he lets him stay behind. Eurylochus being a pain in the ass. Circe, now make good a promise you gave me once. It's time to help me home. My heart longs to be home. My comrades' hearts as well. They wear me down, pleading with me whenever you're away. So I pressed, and the lustrous goddess answered me in turn. Royal son of Laertes, Odysseus, old campaigner, stay on no more in my house against your will. But first, another journey calls. You must travel down to the house of death and the awesome one, Persephone, there to consult the ghost of Tiresias, seer of Thebes, the great blind prophet whose mind remains unshaken, even in death. Persephone has given him wisdom, everlasting vision to him and him alone, and the rest of the dead are empty, flitting shades. So she said, and crushed the heart inside me. What is suppliant? Jesse, go back to the book club for book 6, where we meet Nausicaa on the Isle of the Phaeacians. We talked about being a suppliant and supplication and that pose and what that all meant. I knelt in her bed and wept. I'd no desire to go on living and see the rising light of day, but once I'd had my fill of tears and writhing there, at last I found the words to venture. Circe, who can pilot us on that journey? Who has ever reached the house of death in a black ship? The lustrous goddess answered, never pausing. Royal son of Laertes, Odysseus, born for exploits, let no lack of a pilot at the helm concern you. No, just step your mast and spread your white sail wide. Sit back, and the north wind will speed you on your way. But once your vessel has cut across the ocean river, you'll raise a desolate coast in Persephone's grove. Her tall black poplars, willows whose fruit dies young. Beat your vessel hard by the ocean's churning shore.
and make your own way down to the mouldering house of death. And there into Acheron, the flood of grief, 2 rivers flow, the torrent river of fire, and the wailing river of tears, that branches off from Styx, the stream of hate. And a stark crag looms, where the 2 rivers thunder down and meet. So the reason Persephone gets name dropped, but Hades doesn't. Why would you want to get Hades' attention by name dropping him? Just saying. Generally, that's how it is. It's not that uncommon. So, and also House of Death, it likely in the Greek says House of Hades. But Fagles, we talked about this, I believe, in the previous book, that Fagles likes to translate it as House of Death. So it likely actually says House of Hades in the original Greek. So, wanted to mention where she talks about these rivers here. So Acheron and Styx are the only ones who have their rivers, like they're just given their names, as opposed to some of the others. The others are glossed in this translation, so they're just translated. Probably because at least one of them for me is extremely difficult to try and say aloud. Thank God. Lattimore uses House of Hades. Yeah, I believe in the Greek it says can confirm House of Aeaea. Yeah, Aeaea. So it is House of Hades. This is something, again, we talked about in the previous book, that Fagles likes to use the phrase House of Death. It's very dramatic sounding, so I don't blame him. So, the Greek name of the river of fire we mentioned. We did talk about these rivers back in book 2, but we'll, repeat at least them a little bit. The river of fire is, Pyriphlegeton, which is fucking impossible for me to try and pronounce, and the river of tears is Cocytus, or Cocytos. They are very familiar. Again, also, if you've read Paradise Lost by Milton, he does all the naming. It's not accidentally from the God of the Underworld, yeah. So, he's the reason that Acheron and Styx are probably the only ones that he didn't spell out is likely because we've heard kind of the river Acheron and we've heard of the river Styx. Those are usually for most people who have read even a little bit of mythology, you've heard of those. But Pyriphlegeton and Cocytus, if you would just leave those names, people would go, what the fuck are those? Again, if you go back to the book 2 book club, we talk about this because they get name dropped there as well. Spot on. Oh, hey, I didn't totally screw it up. Pyriphlegeton. It is, it throws me every time I look at it. I'm just like, it's just, it looks like word salad, so it takes me a second. Yeah, I was probably also in Dante's Inferno. Would not surprise me. Once there, go forward, hero. Do as I say now. Dig a trench of about a 4-arm's depth and length, and around it pour libations out to all the dead. First with milk and honey, and then with mellow wine, then water third and last, and sprinkle glistening barley over it all, and vow again and again to all the dead, to the drifting, listless spirits of their ghosts, that once you return to Ithaca, you will slaughter a barren heifer in your halls, the best you have, and load a pyre with treasures, and to Tiresias alone, apart, you will offer a sleek black ram, the pride of all your herds. And once your prayers have invoked the nations of the dead in their dim glory, slaughter a ram and a black ewe, turning both their heads towards Erebus, but turn your head away, looking toward the ocean river. Suddenly, when the countless shades of the dead and gone will surge around you there, but order your men at once to flay the sheep that lie before you, killed by your ruthless blade, and burn them both, and then say prayers to the gods, to the almighty god of death, and dread Persephone. But you, draw your sharp sword from beside your hip, sit down on alert there, and never let the ghosts of the shambling, shiftless dead come near that blood, till you have questioned Tiresias yourself. Late to class. Where are we? We are on page 247, around line 592-ish. Fagles really does take the approach of Macbeth on Hades, it's true. He commits. He pretty much commits. He's consistent. We'll give him this. If he makes an artistic choice, he holds to it throughout the story, which is great. Soon the great seer will appear before you, captain of armies. He will tell you the way to go, the stages of your voyage, how you can cross the swarming sea and reach home at last." And with those words, Dawn rose on her golden throne, and Circe dressed me quickly in a sea cloak and shirt, while the queen slipped on a loose, glistening robe, filmy, a joy to the eye, and round her waist she ran a brocaded golden belt, and over her head a scarf to shield her brow. And I strode on through the halls to stir my men, hovering over each with a winning word. "Up, now, no more lazing away in sleep. We must set sail. Queen Circe has shown the way." I brought them round, my hardy friends in arms, but not even from there could I get them safely off without a loss. There was a man, Elpenor, the youngest in our ranks, none too brave in battle, none too sound in mind. He'd strayed from his mates in Circe's magic halls, and keen for the cool night air, sodden with wine, he'd bedded down on her roofs. But roused by the shouts and tread of marching men, he'd leapt up with a start at dawn, but still so dazed, he forgot to climb back down again by the long ladder. Head first from the roof he plunged, his neck snapped from the backbone. His soul flew down to death. Not only is that not what I said, but that was oddly specific. Once on our way, I gave the men their orders. "You think we are headed home, our own dear land? Well, Circe sets us a rather different course. Down to the house of death and the awesome one Persephone, there to consult the ghost of Tiresias, seer of Thebes." So I said, and it broke my shipmates' hearts. They sank down on the ground, moaning, tore their hair. But it gained us nothing. What good can come of grief? Back to the swift ship on the water's edge we went, our spirits deep in anguish, faces wet with tears. But Circe got to the dark hull before us, tethered a ram and black ewe close by, slipping past unseen. Who could glimpse a god who wants to be invisible, gliding here and there? Dun, dun, dun. And that is the end of book 10. Are there any questions about book 10? Or of the first 10 books overall? So no questions about going past 10. Mind you, no spoilers here. How long can one depend on Xenia? Odin and his crew were there for 1 year. They were there for 1 year, and that was okay. The suitors were not there for 10 years. They were there for about 5, but they were unwelcome and unwanted, and they violated Xenia. I want my guests to leave after a week, and that's too much. Yeah, they're there with Circe for a year, and she's okay with it. They are allowed to stay there for kind of as long as they wish. That's not the case with the suitors in the palace. Why are 3 years still okay? 3 years are not okay. It's 1 year. It's 1 year. It's 1 year. Oh, Elpenor, you may not have been that valiant or smart, but you won a place in our hearts and some kind of immortality. Yeah, you kind of did in a weird way. So 1 year. They're there for 1 year. But the suitors are there for like 5 to 6, it's implied. 1 year outside. What do we mean outside? We mean 1 year outside. They spend 1 year on Circe's island. 3 years is pushing it, 5 is excessive. Well, the point is also that they don't want the suitors there. Like, yeah, you're here, but we don't want you here. Circe has no problem with them being there. She's fine with them staying there. She's like, yeah, stay as long as you want. That's cool. It has to do with what the host is thinking there. The suitors stayed because Penelope and Telemachus didn't have the authority to cast them out, if I recall. Yes, part of the problem is they are not the man. Like, Odysseus is still the man of the house. He hasn't been declared dead, so the suitors are exploiting that fact. Whereas we're on Circe's island, and she's just like, that's cool, just stay. You're welcome. Is it dependent on the wealth of the host in terms of how long somebody can stay? No, it's kind of dependent upon the goodwill of the host. Like, there's a point where it's like, okay, you're here eating me out of house and home. At that point, you're a burden onto the host, and you're demonstrating bad Xenia. So I guess you could say it's to do with the wealth of the house. It's really just also the behavior. 1 year with the 3 children. Yeah, I know.
So, yeah, the issue is that Cersei can totally afford to have them there for a year. She's fine having them here. They're welcome for a year. They're welcome to stay longer if they want. She doesn't care. That's fine. And she'd absolutely have more than enough authority to throw them out. At this point, Xenia's kind of been put back in balance. So, one Earth year or one Aeaea year. It's just 1 year. Time does not move differently on Aeaea. Okay, look. I already cleared this up. I do want to make this clear. I spoke in the Cersei video that was how I remembered it. I'd misremembered it. I then put a very public post out saying I asked my grandfather about it. He checked me on it. I thought we were all clear on this topic. It's 1 year. Time does not move differently. We've also already quite a few times had the conversation about don't get caught up on time, because you'll find that there are actually years missing in the Odyssey. So there's that. Wine! Yeah, don't get drunk and fall off the roots. I already got reprimanded last night. Matt's grandfather told us about this, and Matt even quoted, don't get caught in the weeds on the topic of time. Yeah, it's true. If you drink yourself stupid, it's no good, you get in trouble. Oh yeah, Greek myths talk about that all the time. We can try this again? Okay. The years missing were for seasoning. Just for seasoning. I mean, you could even argue they're caught up in travel somewhere. I mean, we don't know. It's fine. Yeah, very allegorical, metaphorical, not literal. If you're getting caught in the literal weeds of all of this, you're going to have your head spin, and you've kind of lost the forest through the trees. Yes, Queen of our hearts, Peg. She has arrived. You gonna be okay?